What if the kid who had nothing became the warrior who feared nothing? This is the story of Izuku Midoriya, a boy broken by tragedy, forged through brutal combat, and reborn as the most dangerous fighter hero society has ever seen. Forget everything you know about Deku. This is what if Deku had Akaza's powers, and this warrior shows no mercy. Welcome, Legends, to Chronos Recom. I wrote this story myself, so if you have any suggestions or what-ifs you want to see, drop it in the comments below. Also, just wanted to let you know I've got a Patreon set up now for anyone who wants to support the channel directly. You can get early access to stories, submit direct fan requests, and get exclusive content. It's totally optional, but if you want to help keep these stories coming, check it out. Links in the description. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and hit that bell so you never miss an upload. Let's dive into this story.
The cemetery was quiet, save for the whisper of wind through the cherry blossoms that had just begun to bloom. Izuku Midoriya stood before a simple gravestone, his muscular frame casting a long shadow in the late afternoon sun. At 16 years old, he looked nothing like the scrawny, desperate child who had once knelt at this same spot 3 years ago. "Mom," he said quietly, his voice deeper now, resonant with a confidence that had been forged in blood and discipline. "Tomorrow, I take the UA entrance exam. Atsushi-sensei says I'm ready. Rumi says I'll dominate it." He paused, his intense green eyes, harder than they should be at his age, fixed on the carved name before him. "I wish you could see who I've become." The wind picked up, scattering petals across the grave. Izuku's hand, scarred from countless hours of training and combat, clenched at his side. The pink tips of his dark green hair, a manifestation of his quirk's evolution, caught the dying light. "I'm not that weak, pathetic thief anymore," he continued, his tone shifting to something darker, edged with an old pain that would never fully heal. "I found strength, I found purpose. I found a family that didn't give up on me." His jaw tightened, but I still remember. Every day I remember what weakness cost me, what it cost you. He bowed once, deeply, in the traditional manner Atsushi had taught him: respect, honor, discipline. These were the pillars that had rebuilt him from the shattered fragments of a broken child. "I'll make you proud, Mom. I'll become the strongest. Not for fame or glory, but because I refuse to ever be weak again. I refuse to let anyone I love suffer because I'm not strong enough to protect them." With that final promise hanging in the air, Izuku turned and walked away from the cemetery, his steps purposeful and measured. He had no idea that this would be the last moment of peace he would know for a very long time. He had no idea what horror awaited him back at the dojo. To understand the warrior Izuku had become, one must first understand the broken child he had been. 3 years earlier, at 13 years old, Izuku Midoriya lived in the worst part of Musutafu, where the streetlights didn't work, where heroes rarely patrolled, and where quirk discrimination left the unfortunate to rot. His mother, Inko Midoriya, suffered from a chronic illness that quirk-based medicine could treat, but treatment cost money they didn't have. Izuku's quirk, adaptive combat, had manifested late at age 10. It was a powerful quirk, one that strengthened him when he took damage and grew exponentially more potent when facing strong opponents. But in a society that judged quirks at age 4, his late manifestation had branded him quirkless for crucial developmental years. By the time his power emerged, he'd already fallen through every crack in the system. The boy watched his mother waste away, her coughs growing worse, her body growing thinner. He applied for aid, rejected. He begged at hero agencies, ignored. He tried to find work. Too young, no credentials, no connections. So he stole. The first time, his hands shook so badly he nearly dropped the medication. The pharmacy owner, a cruel man who charged triple for life-saving drugs, never even noticed. Izuku's quirk, even then, made him harder to pin down than a normal child. When hit by security guards during his second theft attempt, he'd felt it. That surge of power, his body adapting, growing stronger from the damage taken. For 6 months, he stole. Medication, food, money. He became better at it, his quirk making him faster, more resilient. The guilt ate at him, but seeing his mother's smile when her pain eased was worth any moral compromise, until the day she found his stash. Izuku came home to find Inko sitting at their small kitchen table, surrounded by stolen pill bottles and cash. She looked at him with eyes full of tears and a devastating mixture of love and horror. "Izuku," she whispered, her voice breaking. "What have you done?" "Mom, I can explain. You're stealing from me. It wasn't a question. You're becoming a criminal because of me." "I don't care!" Izuku shouted, 13 years old and desperate. "I don't care what I have to do. I won't let you die." Inko stood, her thin frame trembling. She crossed to him and pulled him into a hug, holding her son tight. Izuku felt her tears soaking into his shoulder. "My beautiful boy," she said softly. "You have such a powerful quirk, such potential. You could be a hero, a real hero, but not if you walk this path. Not if I let my weakness destroy your future." "You're not weak," Izuku protested, but Inko just held him tighter. "I love you," she whispered, "more than anything in this world, which is why I can't let you sacrifice your soul for me." The next morning, Izuku woke to silence. The kind of silence that pressed against the ears, that made the heart race with instinctive dread. He found his mother in the bathroom. She had taken every pill he'd stolen, swallowing them all at once. On the sink, written in shaky handwriting, was a note. "Izuku, my precious son, you have the power to be great. Don't waste it on someone already broken. Live. Be strong. Be the hero I know you can be. I'm sorry I was too weak to be the mother you deserved. I love you. Always." "Mom," Izuku's scream shattered the morning quiet. The boy who emerged from that bathroom was not the same one who had entered. Something fundamental had broken inside Izuku Midoriya. Something that would never fully heal. The authorities came. Social services, a foster system that was overwhelmed and underfunded. Izuku was processed, assigned a caseworker who had 100 other cases, and placed in a group home. He ran away the first night. For a year, Izuku lived on the streets, but he wasn't hiding or scrounging anymore. He was hunting. His quirk, adaptive combat, responded to his rage and pain. It grew stronger with every fight, and Izuku fought constantly. He sought out the strong, underground fighters, street thugs with powerful quirks, anyone who looked like they could hurt him. Because being hurt meant getting stronger, and getting stronger was the only thing that made sense anymore. He'd pick fights in alleyways, his eyes wild with a kind of desperate fury. "Fight me!" He'd shout at men twice his size. "Come on, show me your strength!" They'd oblige, usually with cruel laughter. A 14-year-old kid challenging them? It was a joke, until Izuku got back up. That was what unnerved them. No matter how hard they hit him, no matter how much damage they dealt, Aiza's Atsushi Usagiyama moved with the fluid grace of a true master, each step economical and precise. Izuku's quirk roared its warning. This man was dangerous beyond measure. "You're the street fighter they call the kid who won't fall," Atsushi said, studying Izuku with eyes that seemed to see right through him. 14 years old, quirk that adapts to combat stress, orphaned a year ago. You've been fighting in underground circuits, building a reputation for reckless violence. How do you... "I was a pro hero for 20 years before I retired to teach," Atsushi interrupted. "I make it my business to know when troubled kids with powerful quirks appear in my city." He stepped closer, hands relaxed at his sides. "You came here to rob me, to steal from my dojo. Do you understand the insult that represents?" Izuku's jaw clenched. "I don't care about your honor. I need money." "No," Atsushi said quietly. "You need purpose. There's a difference." He gestured to the open floor. "But you came here looking for strength, so I'll give you a chance. Fight me. If you can land a single clean hit, I'll let you go with enough money to live on for a month. If you can't," he smiled slightly, "you become my student." "What?" both Izuku and Rumi said simultaneously. "Dad, are you serious?" Rumi protested. "He's a thief." "He's a boy in pain who's channeling it the only way he knows how," Atsushi replied, never taking his eyes off Izuku. "I've seen that look before. The emptiness, the rage, the desperate search for meaning through violence." His expression softened slightly. "I've worn that look myself once upon a time." Izuku stared at this man who claimed to see through him, who offered not punishment but opportunity. Part of him wanted to run. The larger part, the part that lived only for combat, was already moving forward. "One clean hit," Izuku said, rolling his shoulders. "Then I walk with the money, if you can manage it." What followed was the most one-sided fight of Izuku's life. Atsushi didn't just defeat him, he dismantled him. Every attack Izuku threw was redirected, countered, or simply avoided with minimal movement. The old master's fighting style was perfection itself, decades of refinement making every motion serve multiple purposes. Izuku's quirk adapted, making him faster, stronger. It didn't matter. Atsushi adapted faster, reading Izuku's patterns before he'd fully formed them. A sweep took Izuku's legs. A palm strike to the solar plexus drove the air from his lungs. A joint lock hyperextended his arm. A throw sent him crashing into the mat hard enough to see stars. "You rely on your quirk," Atsushi observed, not even breathing hard while Izuku gasped for air. "It makes you strong, yes, but you have no foundation, no technique. You're a wild animal fighting on instinct." Izuku charged again, throwing a combination he'd learned from street fights. Atsushi slipped past it like smoke, his counterstrike stopping a centimeter from Izuku's throat. "Dead," the old master said simply. Rage flooded Izuku. He'd been fighting for a year, growing stronger with every battle, and this old man was toying with him. His quirk surged, responding to his emotion, feeding him more power. He became faster, more aggressive. His attacks carried real killing intent now. Atsushi's expression shifted to something more serious. "Better. You're finally fighting instead of just attacking." He blocked a straight punch, redirected a kick, then moved into Izuku's guard faster than the boy could react. The throw that followed actually incorporated Izuku's own momentum against him, sending him spinning through the air before crashing down so hard the impact rattled his teeth. But still not good enough. Izuku tried to rise. His body, pushed beyond even his quirk's ability to adapt in the moment, refused. He'd taken too much damage too quickly. For the first time in a year, he physically couldn't get up. Tears of frustration burned his eyes. Not sadness. He had no more tears for sadness. Just pure, impotent rage at his own weakness. "I'll get stronger," he gasped out, blood on his lips. "I'll come back and I'll beat you." "I know you will," Atsushi said, kneeling beside the broken boy. "That's why I'm not letting you leave." Izuku woke in a small, clean room he didn't recognize. His body was bandaged, his injuries treated. Panic flared. He tried to bolt upright and immediately regretted it as pain lanced through his ribs. "Easy," Rumi's voice came from the corner. She sat in a chair, watching him with those intense red eyes. "You've got 3 cracked ribs, a dislocated shoulder that Dad popped back in, and about 1,000,000 bruises. Your quirk's already healing you faster than normal, but you still need rest." "Where?" "Dojo's guest room. Dad carried you here after you passed out." She stood, crossing to the bed. "You've been out for 6 hours. Izuku's mind raced, calculating escape routes, assessing his current combat capability. Rumi noticed and actually laughed. "Relax, street rat. If we wanted to turn you in, we'd have done it already. Dad has something else in mind." As if summoned by her words, Atsushi appeared in the doorway, carrying a tray with rice, miso soup, and grilled fish. The smell made Izuku's stomach clench. He couldn't remember the last real meal he'd eaten. "Eat," the old master commanded, setting the tray on a bedside table. "You can't train on an empty stomach." "Train?" Izuku's voice was suspicious. "I'm not your student. I didn't agree to anything." "You agreed when you accepted my challenge," Atsushi countered, settling into a sitting position with perfect posture. "I offered terms. You couldn't fulfill your end, so now you fulfill mine." "That's not, I didn't." "Eat," Atsushi repeated, his tone brooking no argument. "Then we'll talk." Izuku wanted to refuse out of sheer spite, but his body betrayed him. He was starving. The food was simple but perfectly prepared. He tried to eat slowly, maintain some dignity, but within minutes the tray was empty. Atsushi watched with something like satisfaction. "When did you last eat a proper meal?" "None of your business." 3 days ago, Rumi interjected from her corner. "We checked. You've been surviving on convenience store food and whatever you could steal. Your body's running on fumes and quirk-enhanced resilience. I'm fine." "You're dying slowly," Atsushi said bluntly. "Oh, your quirk keeps you functional, keeps you able to fight. But you're malnourished, sleep-deprived, and psychologically damaged. At the rate you're going, you'll be dead before you turn 16, either from cumulative damage your quirk can't keep up with, or from picking a fight with someone who will actually kill you." The words hit harder than any of the evening's physical blows. Izuku looked away, jaw clenched. "I don't care." "Yes, you do," Atsushi replied. "You care so much it's eating you alive. You care that you couldn't save your mother. You care that you were weak when it mattered. You care that the world is cruel and unfair and full of suffering you're powerless to stop. He leaned forward. So you're trying to make yourself strong enough that you'll never be powerless again. I understand that drive. I respect it. But strength without purpose, without discipline, without foundation, that's just violence, and violence alone will destroy you. Izuku met the old man's eyes, seeing something there he hadn't expected. Understanding. Not pity. He'd have rejected pity, but genuine understanding from someone who'd walked a similar path. "What do you want from me?" he asked quietly. "I want to teach you," Atsushi said simply. "Your quirk is extraordinary. Adaptive combat. It's one of the most potentially powerful quirks I've encountered. But raw power means nothing without control, without technique. You've been fighting for a year, yes, but you haven't been learning to fight. You've been learning to survive. There's a difference." "I'm not weak," Izuku said, defensive. "No," Atsushi agreed. "You're not. You're incredibly strong for your age, and your quirk makes you stronger with every battle, but you're inefficient, sloppy. You rely on your quirk to compensate for lack of skill. Against street thugs and underground fighters, that works. Against a trained martial artist, you had no chance. Against a top-tier hero or villain, you'd be killed in seconds." The truth of it stung, but Izuku couldn't deny it. "I can teach you proper technique," Atsushi continued. "Not just how to throw a punch, but how to read an opponent, how to control the flow of battle, how to maximize your quirk's potential through disciplined training. I can teach you the difference between a brawler and a warrior." "Why?" Izuku asked, suspicion creeping back. "Why would you waste time on someone like me?" Atsushi was quiet for a moment, then, 25 years ago, I was not so different from you. I had power, I had rage, and I had no direction. I hurt people. Villains, yes, but I hurt them in ways that weren't necessary. I crossed lines. I almost became the very thing I was fighting against." His expression grew distant. "Someone gave me a second chance, took me in, taught me discipline and honor, showed me that strength could be more than just the ability to destroy. I'm still here because of that kindness, so now I pay it forward. Plus," Rumi added with a sharp grin, "Dad's always wanted a project. His regular students are too well-adjusted and boring. You, street rat, are definitely not boring." Despite himself, Izuku felt the corner of his mouth twitch. It wasn't quite a smile, but it was something. "If I agree to this," he said slowly, "I'm not going to become some soft, peace-loving hero. I don't believe in that. The world is about strength. The strong survive and the weak suffer. That's reality." "I'm not asking you to change your worldview," Atsushi replied. "I'm asking you to refine it. Yes, strength matters, but what you do with that strength, how you wield it, who you protect with it, that matters too. You don't have to love the world, you don't have to believe it's fair, but you can be strong enough to carve out a piece of it worth protecting." Izuku thought of his mother, of the pills he'd stolen, of her final note. "Be the hero I know you can be." "I'm not a hero," he said quietly. "Not yet," Atsushi agreed. "But you could be. A different kind of hero. The kind who doesn't smile and make speeches, but who fights with everything they have to protect what matters. The kind who understands darkness because they've lived in it." For a long moment, Izuku was silent. Then, "If I do this, I train harder than anyone. I don't want kid gloves or special treatment. I want to be pushed until I break, then put back together stronger." Atsushi's smile was fierce and proud. "I wouldn't have it any other way. And I'm still going to seek out strong opponents. That's not negotiable. Under supervision and in appropriate contexts, yes, no more underground death matches." Izuku hesitated, then nodded slowly. "Fine, but I'm warning you now, I'm going to surpass you. I'm going to become stronger than you've ever been." Rumi barked out a laugh. "Oh, I like him, Dad. He's got spirit." "That he does," Atsushi agreed, standing and offering Izuku his hand. "Welcome to the Usagiyama Dojo, Izuku Midoriya. Your real training begins tomorrow." Izuku stared at the offered hand for a heartbeat, then took it. He didn't know it then, but this handshake would change everything. Training under Atsushi Usagiyama was unlike anything Izuku had experienced. It was brutal, yes, more physically demanding than his street fighting had ever been, but it was brutal with purpose. They started with the basics: stance, footwork, breathing, things Izuku initially dismissed as pointless until Atsushi demonstrated how proper stance could add 30% more power to a strike, how correct breathing could extend his stamina exponentially. "You've been fighting with your body," Atsushi explained during their first real session. "Now you learn to fight with your mind." The old master broke down Izuku's raw fighting style and rebuilt it from the ground up. He taught him classical martial arts, karate, judo, Muay Thai, Brazilian jiu-jitsu. Each style contributed something to Izuku's growing arsenal. More than that, Atsushi taught him to integrate his quirk into technique rather than relying on it as a crutch. Adaptive combat makes you stronger when damaged and when facing powerful opponents, like Atsushi observed during a sparring session. But you're using it passively. You take hits to power up. What if you could trigger its adaptive properties through training? Controlled stress that builds your baseline without requiring you to nearly die every time. It was a revelation. Through carefully structured training that pushed Izuku to his limits without breaking him, his quirk began to evolve. His baseline strength, speed, and durability increased steadily. The adaptation that used to take life or death combat could now be achieved through intense training, but there were still hard limits. His quirk's true power only emerged against strong opponents. The stronger the foe, the stronger Izuku became. Atsushi couldn't trigger that aspect in training, but he could prepare Izuku to exploit it when the moment came. Rumi was there too, always. She trained alongside Izuku, her own quirk. Rabbit, which gave her enhanced leg strength and hearing, making her a formidable fighter despite being a year older. At first, their relationship was purely combative. Rumi delighted in knocking the cocky street fighter on his ass, and Izuku burned with determination to return the favor. They sparred daily, pushing each other relentlessly. "You're too predictable," Rumi would shout, her kit whistling past Izuku's head because he'd finally learned to duck. "Change up your rhythm. You rely too much on your legs," Izuku would counter, managing to land a body blow that actually made her grunt. "Diversify your attacks." Atsushi watched their sparring with quiet satisfaction. They were making each other better. Months passed. Izuku's body transformed. The malnourished street fighter filled out with real muscle, his frame becoming denser and more powerful. His scars remained. He wore them with pride. Marks of battles survived and lessons learned. His quirk, fed by constant training and occasional supervised matches against strong opponents. Atsushi arranged, continued to evolve. He developed the ability to sense fighting spirit, an instinctive awareness of an opponent's power level and combat intent. It wasn't reading minds, it was reading the subtle cues of body language, quirk activation, and aggressive intent that his quirk translated into almost precognitive awareness. Atsushi called it Izuku's compass. It would become the foundation of his fighting style. But technique and power weren't the only things Izuku learned at the dojo. He learned discipline, waking at dawn for meditation and kata practice. He learned respect, proper etiquette toward teachers and fellow students. He learned patience, understanding that true strength was built over time, not seized in desperate moments. Most importantly, he learned that strength could be shared, not just hoarded. Watching Atsushi teach younger students with infinite patience, seeing Rumi's fierce protectiveness toward the dojo's community, Izuku began to understand what his mother had meant. Being strong didn't have to mean being alone. Strength could be the foundation that protected others, not just armor against the world. The nightmares didn't stop. He still saw his mother's face, still woke gasping from dreams of finding her lifeless body. But now, when he woke, he wasn't alone in a cold alley. He was in a warm room in the dojo, and if he walked to the training floor, he'd find Atsushi already awake, waiting to drill techniques until Izuku's mind quieted. Sometimes Rumi would be there too, unable to sleep herself. They'd spar in silence, communication happening through fists and feet and the growing understanding between them. The first year passed in a blur of training, growth, and slow healing of wounds that went deeper than skin. Year 2 began with Atsushi's announcement. "You've mastered the basics. Now we create your style." They stood in the dojo's main hall, early morning light streaming through windows. Izuku, now 15, had transformed completely from the broken 14-year-old who'd attempted robbery. He stood taller, carried himself with controlled power, and his eyes had regained something beyond emptiness, purpose. Every true martial artist develops their own style, Atsushi explained. Mine combined my quirk, impact amplification, with traditional karate, creating a devastating close combat system. Rumi is developing her own style using her rabbit quirk's leg strength, and you, Izuku, will create something unique to your adaptive combat quirk. What do you have in mind? Izuku asked, eager. I don't have anything in mind, Atsushi corrected with a slight smile. You do. I've taught you the techniques. Now you must discover how they synthesize with your quirk to create something entirely your own. This isn't something I can teach. It's something you must forge through experience. So Izuku began experimenting. He tested combinations, drawing from everything Atsushi had taught him. He sparred against Rumi, against visiting martial artists, against pro heroes Atsushi called in as favors. His quirk revealed new properties as he pushed it in training. When fighting stronger opponents, he didn't just adapt to their level. He could sense their movements before they completed them. His compass reading their fighting spirit and predicting their actions. More than that, his quirk seemed to enhance the impact of his strikes when fully engaged. It wasn't just making him stronger, it was making his techniques more potent, as if his body instinctively knew how to maximize damage. The breakthrough came during a sparring match with Rumi. They'd been going for 30 minutes, both pushed to their limits. Rumi launched one of her devastating aerial kicks, a technique she'd named Luna Arc, and Izuku's compass screamed the trajectory. He saw the opening, felt his quirk surge, and struck. His punch wasn't just fast. It was precise, perfectly timed, and it created a visible shockwave through the air. The impact sent Rumi flying backward despite her raised guard, and both fighters stopped in shock. What was that? Rumi demanded, rubbing her arms where she'd blocked. That wasn't normal quirk enhancement. That was technique. Izuku stared at his fist, feeling the residual energy. I don't know. It felt like my quirk synchronized with the striking technique, like they became one thing instead of two separate elements. Atsushi, observing from the sidelines, looked pleased. Show me again. They spent the next month refining the technique. Izuku discovered he could channel his quirk through specific strikes, creating devastating effects. A straight punch generated a forward shockwave. An uppercut created explosive upward force. Rapid combinations produced cascading impacts. It needs a name, Rumi said one evening after training. They sat on the dojo's steps, cooling down under the stars. Your style. If you're creating something new, it needs an identity. Izuku considered. His style was aggressive, destructive, meant to overwhelm opponents with relentless assault. It was born from his darkest moments, but refined through discipline. It was death to his enemies, but life to those he protected. Destructive death, he said finally. That's what I'll call it. Destructive death, fighting style. Rumi raised an eyebrow. That's pretty dark. I'm pretty dark, Izuku replied with a slight smirk, an expression that would have been impossible a year ago. Fair point. She stretched her powerful legs, considering. So what are you going to call the techniques? Over the following months, Izuku developed and named his signature moves Destructive Death, Compass Needle, his quirk sensing ability, reading an opponent's fighting spirit to predict and counter their movements, Destructive Death, Air Type, rapid straight punches that generated forward shockwaves, allowing him to strike opponents at short range without direct contact, Destructive Death, Disorder, a barrage of strikes from unpredictable angles, each one enhanced by his quirk's power, meant to overwhelm an opponent's defense. Destructive Death, Leg Type, Crown Splitter, a devastating axe kick that channeled his full power downward, capable of cratering concrete. Destructive Death, Leg Type, Explosive Flurry, a rapid series of kicks delivered in sequence, each one building off the momentum of the last. Destructive Death, Annihilation Type, his most powerful single strike, requiring full commitment and leaving no room for defense. A blow meant to end fights decisively, the final technique came to him in a dream. He'd been thinking about his mother, about cherry blossoms at her grave, about the beauty that could exist even in darkness. He woke with clarity. Destructive Death, blue-silver chaotic afterglow, his ultimate technique, a full-body assault that combined every aspect of his training. It was beautiful and terrible. a storm of strikes delivered with absolute precision and overwhelming power. The name came from the visual effect. His quirk at full power made the air shimmer blue-silver around his attacks. When he demonstrated it for Atsushi in controlled conditions, the old master actually took a step back. That, Atsushi said quietly, is the technique of a true martial artist. You've taken everything I taught you and made it entirely your own. But power wasn't the only thing developing between the dojo's walls. Izuku and Rumi's relationship had evolved from rivalry to partnership over 2 years. They trained together every day, pushed each other's limits, and developed an almost telepathic coordination in sparring. But somewhere along the way, something shifted. Izuku noticed it first. The way Rumi's laugh made something warm bloom in his chest. How he caught himself watching her train, admiring not just her technique but the fierce determination in her eyes. The way his breath caught when she smiled at him after a particularly good match. He tried to suppress it. After losing his mother, Izuku had built walls around his heart. Caring meant vulnerability. Vulnerability meant weakness. Weakness meant loss. But Rumi was relentless in everything she did, including breaking through those walls. "You're being weird," she announced one evening, cornering him after training. "More than usual, I mean. What's going on?" "Nothing," Izuku said, which was a terrible lie. "Bullshit." Rumi crossed her arms, red eyes intense. "We've trained together for almost 2 years. I know when you're hiding something. Talk." Izuku struggled with the words. Talking about feelings wasn't something his destructive death fighting style had prepared him for. "I don't want to ruin what we have." "What do we have?" Rumi challenged. Izuku gestured vaguely. "Partners. Training partners. Friends, I guess. I don't want to mess that up by what? Having feelings?" Rumi stepped closer, and Izuku could feel his heart hammering in a way no fight had ever caused. "You think I haven't noticed the way you look at me? You think I don't feel the same thing?" Izuku's breath caught. "You? What?" "I'm not subtle, Izuku," Rumi said, her fierce expression softening slightly. "When I want something, I go after it. And I want you. Have for months. I was just waiting for you to get your head out of your ass and realize it too." "I'm broken," Izuku said quietly, the admission costing him. "I'm full of rage and darkness, and I don't know if I can be what you deserve." "I don't want perfect," Rumi replied, reaching up to cup his face. "I want real. I want someone who understands strength and isn't afraid of their own darkness. I want someone who can keep up with me, who challenges me, who I can be fierce with." Her smile turned fierce. "I want you, you idiot." The kiss was inevitable, explosive, perfect. Izuku felt walls he'd built crumbling, and for the first time since his mother's death, he let them fall. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Rumi grinned. "Took you long enough?" "I'm still not good at this," Izuku warned. "At feelings and relationships, and then we'll figure it out together," Rumi interrupted. "Like we do everything else, through practice and beating the crap out of each other until we get it right." Izuku found himself actually laughing, the sound strange and wonderful. "That's the most romantic thing you've ever said." "Shut up and kiss me again." Atsushi, watching from a window above, smiled and quietly walked away, giving them privacy. The next year brought new depth to Izuku's life. His relationship with Rumi was passionate and competitive. They still sparred daily, still pushed each other relentlessly. But now those sessions ended with tangled limbs and stolen kisses rather than just mutual respect. Rumi graduated and immediately entered the hero world, her powerful quirk and aggressive fighting style making her a rising star. She took the hero name Mirko and quickly gained recognition for her fearless approach to combat. Meanwhile, Izuku continued his training, preparing for the UA entrance exam. Atsushi pushed him harder than ever, knowing his student's potential was nearly unlimited. "You're ready," the old master told Izuku on his 16th birthday. "Your destructive death style is refined, your quirk integration is seamless, your compass ability gives you an edge against virtually any opponent. You're one of the most formidable fighters I've ever trained." "But," Izuku sensed the hesitation, "but power without purpose is just destruction," Atsushi said, echoing their first conversation. "At UA, you'll face challenges that aren't just about being strong. You'll need to prove you can be trusted with that strength." "I know," Izuku replied. He'd come a long way from the empty shell who'd only lived for combat. Rumi had given him something to protect beyond himself. Atsushi had given him honor and discipline. Together they'd given him a future worth fighting for. I won't let you down. You never have, Atsushi said warmly. Then his expression shifted to something more serious. Izuku, there's something I want to discuss with you, about Rumi. Izuku straightened, suddenly nervous. Atsushi-sensei? You love my daughter, Atsushi said. It wasn't a question. I do, Izuku confirmed without hesitation, more than anything. And she loves you. I've watched you two together. You make each other better, stronger, yes, but also more complete. Atsushi paused. In my generation, we did things more traditionally. I know you're young, both of you, but I also know that bonds forged in combat and hardship run deeper than most people experience in a lifetime. Izuku's heart raced. He had an idea where this was going, but he barely dared to hope. If you wanted to make things official, Atsushi continued, to declare your intent to build a future together, you would have my blessing. In fact, he pulled a small box from his pocket. This was my mother's engagement ring. I was saving it for when Rumi found someone worthy. I believe that someone is you. Izuku stared at the box, overwhelmed. Atsushi-sensei, you saved my daughter's spirit. Atsushi interrupted gently. She was always strong, always fierce, but she was fighting just to fight. You gave her someone worth being strong for, just as she gave you a reason to live beyond survival. That's worth more than any material thing I could give. Izuku took the box with shaking hands, opened it to reveal a simple but elegant ring. I won't let her down. I swear it on everything I am. I know you won't, Atsushi replied, pulling Izuku into a brief but tight hug. You're the son I never had, Izuku. Welcome to the family. That evening, Izuku took Rumi to the rooftop of the dojo, where they often trained under the stars. The city lights spread below them, and the spring air was gentle. You're being weird again, Rumi observed, though she was smiling. What's going on? Izuku took a breath, centering himself like he did before a fight. Rumi Usagiyama, you made me want to live again. Before you, I was just going through motions, fighting because it was all I knew how to do. But you showed me that strength could be shared, that I could be powerful and still care about something beyond myself. Izuku? Rumi's eyes widened as he dropped to one knee. I'm not good with words, he continued, pulling out the ring. I'm better at expressing myself through combat. But what I feel for you, it's stronger than any quirk, deeper than any technique. You're my equal, my rival, my partner. You're everything. So I'm asking, will you marry me? For a moment, Rumi just stared. Then she laughed, tears streaming down her face. You absolute idiot, you beautiful, powerful, emotionally constipated idiot. She dropped to her knees, grabbing his face and kissing him hard. Yes. Yes? Obviously yes? Izuku slipped the ring onto her finger, and they stayed there on the rooftop, holding each other as the stars wheeled overhead. They were young, yes, but they'd both lived lifetimes of pain and growth. They'd found each other in darkness and built something luminous together. They had no idea how soon that light would be tested. The weeks leading up to the UA entrance exam were some of the happiest of Izuku's life. He trained during the day, perfecting his destructive death techniques. In the evenings, Rumi would return from her hero patrols, and they'd spar, laugh, plan their future. When you get into UA, Rumi said one night as they cooled down, you're going to be the most badass hero student they've ever seen. When, not if, Izuku raised an eyebrow. Please, Rumi scoffed. Have you met yourself? You're going to destroy that entrance exam. They'll probably beg you to attend. Your confidence in me is noted, Izuku replied dryly, but warmth flooded his chest. Having someone believe in him so completely was still a new experience. Just promise me something, Rumi said, her tone becoming more serious. Don't hold back. I know you've learned discipline and control, but in combat, you need to show them what you're really capable of. No false modesty. I'm not really the modest type, Izuku pointed out. True, your arrogance is one of your most endearing qualities. She grinned. Right up there with your complete inability to cook and your tendency to lecture people about proper fighting stance. I don't lecture. You absolutely lecture. You're doing it right now with your posture. She poked his chest. But I love you anyway. Those words still hit Izuku like a physical blow, the good kind. I love you too. Atsushi watched their interactions with quiet satisfaction. If you want revenge, we're at the abandoned Jaku warehouse district. Bring your rage, we're waiting. Rage. Yes, they wanted his rage. They were going to get it. Izuku called emergency services first, gave the address, described the symptoms. They promised an ambulance in 10 minutes. He called the hero hotline next, explained the situation, demanded immediate help. "Sir, please stay calm. We're dispatching." "Send recovery girl," Izuku interrupted, his voice deadly quiet. "Atsushi Usagiyama is a retired pro hero with priority medical contacts. Find her. Get her here. Now." He hung up before they could respond. 10 minutes. Rumi and Atsushi had to hold on for 10 minutes. He knelt between them, taking Rumi's hand. Her eyes fluttered open, glazed with pain and poison. "Izuku?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I'm here," he said, forcing his voice steady even as his world collapsed. "Help is coming. You're going to be fine. Both of you." "Hurts," she breathed. I know, but you're strong, stronger than anyone. You just have to hold on. Can you do that for me?" She tried to nod, her hand squeezing his weakly. "Love you. I love you too. So much. Just stay with me." Atsushi's eyes opened then, focusing on Izuku with effort. "Izuku, don't talk, sensei. Save your strength." The note, Atsushi's voice was a rasp. Don't go after them. Not worth it." But Izuku barely heard him. His compass sense was expanding, reaching out across the city toward the warehouse district. He could feel them, hundreds of fighting spirits gathered together, some strong, most average. Waiting. Celebrating. They'd poisoned his family, his fiancée, his father figure. They'd struck at the only two people in the world he cared about. They thought they were ready for his rage. They had no idea what was coming. Sirens wailed in the distance. The ambulance was close. Izuku stood, his decision made. "Stay alive," he said to Rumi and Atsushi, his voice carrying a terrible finality. "I'll be back soon." "Izuku, don't." Atsushi tried to protest, but Izuku was already gone. The boy who left the dojo that night was not the disciplined student Atsushi had trained. He was not the loving partner who'd proposed under the stars. He was not the future hero preparing for UA. He was the broken child who'd lost his mother, who'd fought in the streets with empty eyes and a heart full of darkness. He was that rage and pain, refined by 2 years of intensive training and amplified by a quirk that grew stronger against powerful opponents. He was, in that moment, death itself. And the evolutionary front was about to learn what happened when you took everything from someone who had nothing left to lose. The Jaku Warehouse District was a maze of abandoned industrial buildings on Musutafu's eastern edge, perfect for villain organizations that wanted privacy. The evolutionary front had claimed it as their territory, confident in their numbers and the remote location. They had no idea they'd just painted a target on their backs. Izuku approached with his compass fully extended. He could sense them. 214 distinct fighting spirits spread across 3 main warehouse buildings. Some were keeping watch, most were celebrating, confident that their poison had worked. His quirk was already responding. Adaptive combat didn't just trigger from physical damage, it responded to any form of combat stress. Right now, facing overwhelming numbers of enemies, many with powerful quirks, his body was adapting in anticipation. He was getting stronger with every step. The first guards never saw him coming. 2 men with enhancement quirks, laughing about something, cigarettes glowing in the dark. Izuku's compass had already mapped their positions, predicted their reaction times, assessed their power levels. Weak. He moved like a ghost, closing the distance in heartbeats. Destructive death, disorder, a rapid combination of strikes, each one precise and devastating. The first guard's jaw shattered. The second's ribs caved in. Both dropped without managing to cry out. Izuku didn't pause to check if they were alive. He didn't care. More guards ahead. 5 this time, clustered near a warehouse entrance. One had a fire quirk, another had some kind of defensive armor. His compass read them all in an instant. Still weak. "Hey, who the hell?" The one with the fire quirk started to shout in alarm. Izuku was already among them. Destructive death. Air-type, straight punches that generated shockwaves, each one targeted at vital points. Throats, solar plexuses, temples. The guards fell like puppets with cut strings. The one with armor quirk managed to activate his power, metal plates covering his skin. It didn't matter. Destructive death annihilation. Type. A single strike with Izuku's full power behind it. The armor cracked. The man's chest caved in. He went down. Inside the warehouse, someone finally noticed the commotion. An alarm started blaring. Izuku smiled, a cold, terrible expression that had nothing to do with joy. Good. Let them know he was coming. The main warehouse floor opened before him, filled with makeshift living quarters and training areas. Villains poured out, 40, 50, more. They saw him standing in the entrance alone, and some actually laughed. "It's just one kid," someone shouted. "He must be suicidal," another agreed. Izuku's compass read them all, power levels ranging from average to moderately strong. None of them were anywhere near Atsushi's level. None of them were even close to pro-hero status. They were nothing. "You poisoned them," Izuku said, his voice cutting through the noise. "Rumi and Atsushi, you sent me a message that they were dead." The laughter died. In the sudden silence, a man stepped forward, tall, muscular, with a quirk that made his arms grotesquely large and powerful. He had a bandaged jaw. "Oh, I remember you," the man said, his speech slightly slurred from the old injury. "The little street fighter who got lucky. Yeah, we sent that package. Did you like our gift?" "They're not dead yet," Izuku replied, and he felt his quirk surge higher. His rage was feeding it, yes, but more than that. Facing this many opponents, his adaptive combat was responding, getting stronger, faster, more dangerous. "But you wanted my rage. You wanted me to come here and fight you." "We wanted to teach you a lesson about respecting your betters," the man sneered. The evolutionary front represents the future, where the strong with powerful quirks rule over the weak. You think training with some washed-up has-been makes you special? We're going to break you, kid. Break you so badly. "Destructive death? Compass needle?" Izuku interrupted softly. His quirk extended outward, reading every fighting spirit in the warehouse. He saw their formations, their power levels, their intentions. He mapped the entire battlefield in his mind in an instant. Then he moved. The next 5 minutes were carnage. Izuku tore through the villains like a natural disaster. His destructive death style, refined by 2 years of training, was devastating. But now, fueled by rage and grief, and his quirk responding to the threat level, it became something transcendent. Destructive death, disorder. Combinations so fast they seemed to come from multiple attackers, each strike breaking bones and rupturing organs. Destructive death. Air-type, shockwave punches that sent groups of villains flying backward, their bodies impacting walls with bone-shattering force. Destructive death, leg-type, crown splitter. An axe kick that cratered the warehouse floor and created a shockwave that knocked down everyone in a 5-meter radius. They tried to fight back. Quirks activated, fire, ice, enhancement, transformation. It didn't matter. Izuku's compass predicted their attacks before they fully formed. His body, adapting in real time to each quirk's unique properties, found counters instinctively. A villain with a blade quirk lunged at him. Izuku redirected the attack, used the man's own momentum to throw him into 3 others. Destructive death, explosive flurry. A series of kicks that left all 4 broken on the ground. Someone with a ranged quirk tried to hit him from a distance. Izuku's compass sensed the attack vector. He dodged without looking, closed. A fire user left his guard down after launching flames. Disorder combination left him unconscious. An ice user tried to freeze the floor. Izuku's enhanced strength and balance made him immune to such tactics, and a crown splitter kick shattered both the ice and the user's defense. Bodies fell around him. Some unconscious, some with broken bones, all thoroughly defeated. Izuku didn't pause, didn't hesitate, didn't show mercy. They'd tried to kill his family. This was justice. The second chamber held 40 more villains, including several with genuinely powerful quirks. A woman with a sonic scream that could shatter concrete, a man who could harden his body to steel, a pair of twins with a combination quirk that created explosive barriers. They were the strongest members Izuku had faced tonight. His quirk responded accordingly, surging to match and exceed their threat level. The sonic scream was predicted by his compass. He moved before she could fully activate it, closing the distance and ending the threat with a precise strike to her throat that paralyzed her vocal cords without causing permanent damage. The steel body user thought he was invincible. Destructive death, annihilation. Type proved otherwise. Izuku's full power, channeled through perfect technique, shattered the steel hardening and sent the man flying backward into a wall. The twins activated their explosive barriers, trying to trap Izuku between detonations. His compass sensed the quirk activation, predicted the explosion patterns, and he simply wasn't there when they detonated. He appeared behind them, explosive flurry ending their contribution to the fight. More villains fell. Izuku was breathing heavier now, his body accumulating minor damage from the sheer volume of combat. But his quirk adapted to each injury, making him stronger, faster, more durable. He was unstoppable. The final chamber, the core leadership of the evolutionary front. 20 villains, all with powerful quirks, all with actual combat experience beyond street fighting. Their leader was a massive man, easily 2.5 meters tall, with a quirk that combined multiple animal enhancements. He had the strength of a gorilla, the speed of a cheetah, the durability of a rhinoceros. "You've killed our organization," the leader growled, his voice resonant with animal rage. "But you're just a child playing at strength against real power." Izuku's compass flared. This man was strong, genuinely strong. Not at sushi level, but stronger than anyone else Izuku had faced tonight. Perfect. His quirk surged higher, responding to the increased threat. Izuku felt power flooding his system, adaptive combat optimizing every aspect of his body. "You talk too much," Izuku said coldly and attacked. The leader was fast, powerful, experienced. He met Izuku's initial disorder combination with his own strikes, his enhanced strength actually forcing Izuku to give ground. The other 19 villains attacked as well, trying to overwhelm Izuku through numbers. They failed to understand what they were facing. Izuku's compass read all 20 opponents simultaneously. His destructive death style had been designed for exactly this kind of scenario. Overwhelming multiple opponents through superior technique and quirk utilization, he flowed between attackers, using one villain's body as a shield against another's quirk, redirecting attacks into friendly fire, finding the gaps in their coordination and exploiting them ruthlessly. A woman with a blade quirk lunged at his back. Izuku's compass predicted it. He pivoted, grabbed her extended arm, and used her momentum to throw her into 3 others. Air-type shockwaves followed up, ending their contribution to the fight. A man with a transformation quirk became a massive bear-like creature. Crown splitter from above, targeting the transformation's weak point at the neck. The quirk deactivated, the man collapsed. Slowly, methodically, Izuku eliminated the leader's support. Each fallen villain made the next easier to defeat, his compass having fewer variables to track, until it was just Izuku and the leader, surrounded by the broken bodies of the evolutionary front's elite. "Impossible," the leader breathed, staring at the carnage. "You're just one person. We were 200 strong." "You were weak," Izuku replied, and his voice carried absolute conviction. "Numbers mean nothing without strength, and you're all weak compared to the people you tried to kill." The leader roared, an animal sound of rage and desperation, and lunged with all his enhanced speed and power. Izuku's compass had been reading him the entire fight, and he knew the timing, the rhythm, the patterns. He stepped into the attack instead of away, inside the leader's guard. Destructive death, blue-silver chaotic afterglow, his ultimate technique, used now at full power against a worthy opponent. The air shimmered blue-silver, unleashed everything, every technique, every lesson out of refined combat mastery, all amplified by his quirk at peak activation. The combination was beautiful and terrible. Strike after strike, each one precise, each one devastating, each one building off the previous until the assault became a seamless flow of destruction. The leader's enhanced durability held for 3 seconds. His consciousness lasted 5. His ability to stand lasted 8. When Izuku's technique ended, the leader of the evolutionary front lay broken at his feet, breathing, but thoroughly defeated. Izuku stood in the center of the chamber, surrounded by unconscious villains. His compass extended outward, searching for any remaining threats. Nothing. The evolutionary front was finished. 214 villains defeated by a single 16-year-old boy in less than an hour. The rage that had driven him began to ebb, replaced by a creeping horror at what he'd done. This wasn't a sanctioned fight or a training match. This was him, alone, hunting down and systematically destroying an entire organization. He looked at his bloody hands, at the carnage around him, and felt something twist in his chest. Then his phone rang. Izuku stared at his phone, not recognizing the number. His hands, still shaking with adrenaline, nearly dropped it before he answered. "Midoriya." All Might's voice, unmistakable even in its serious mode. "Where are you?" "Jaku Warehouse District," Izuku replied, his voice hoarse. "How did you..." Recovery Girl is at the Usagiyama dojo treating Rumi and Atsushi Usagiyama, All Might interrupted. They're alive, Midoriya. Badly poisoned, but alive. Recovery Girl arrived in time and her quirk is counteracting the toxin. They're going to make it. The words hit Izuku like a physical blow. His legs gave out and he collapsed to his knees among the broken villains. They're alive? Yes. Critically injured but stable. Recovery Girl says they'll need several days to fully recover, but they'll survive. All Might's tone shifted, becoming heavier. Which brings me to why I'm calling. The Hero Network picked up reports of a massacre in progress at the Jaku warehouses. A single attacker systematically destroying the evolutionary front. I'm 2 minutes from your location. Tell me I'm not going to find 200 corpses when I arrive. Izuku looked around the chamber, at the broken but breathing bodies. No corpses, he said quietly. Unconscious, injured, but alive. Thank God, All Might breathed. Stay where you are. Don't move. We need to talk about this. The line went dead. Izuku sat among the fallen villains, his rage completely drained, replaced by a bone-deep exhaustion. They were alive. Rumi and Atsushi were alive. He hadn't lost them. The relief was so intense it hurt, tears streaming down his face without permission. He'd been so ready to lose everything again, so prepared for that familiar agony of loss. But they'd survived. They were going to be okay. Footsteps approached, heavy, purposeful. All Might entered the chamber, his massive frame filling the doorway. He looked around at the carnage, at the unconscious villains, at Izuku kneeling in the center of it all. My God, the number one hero said quietly, you really did fight them all alone. They poisoned my family, Izuku replied, his voice empty. They sent me a message saying Rumi and Atsushi were dead. They wanted me to come here full of rage. Next, so I did. All Might walked through the chamber, checking pulses, assessing injuries. 214 members of a known villain organization, he said, all defeated by a single 16-year-old boy. Some of these injuries are severe, but you're right, no fatalities. How is that even possible? My quirk, adaptive combat, responds to strong opponents by making me stronger, Izuku explained mechanically. And I've been training under Atsushi Usagiyama for 2 years. He taught me the destructive death fighting style. These villains, they weren't strong enough to really threaten me. Not individually. Even 200 at once, they were weaker than Atsushi-sensei on a normal day. All Might studied the broken boy before him. You're covered in blood. Are you injured? Minor damage. My quirk already adapted and healed most of it. Izuku looked at his hands. I can't believe I did this. I should feel guilty or horrified or something. But all I feel is tired. The Evolutionary Front was a wanted villain organization, All Might said carefully. They were responsible for at least 30 deaths and hundreds of injuries. There are active warrants for their arrest. Legally speaking, what you did was vigilante justice, which is illegal. But given the circumstances, they attacked your family, sent you a direct threat, and you can argue self-defense when you arrived to find yourself outnumbered 200 to 1. He sighed. The Hero Public Safety Commission is going to have opinions about this. I don't care about their opinions, Izuku said flatly. Are Rumi and Atsushi really going to be okay? Yes. Recovery Girl's quirk is one of the most powerful healing abilities in existence. She can counteract almost any poison given time. They'll need rest and observation, but they'll make full recoveries. Fresh tears streaked down Izuku's face. I thought I'd lost them, just like my mother. I know, All Might said gently, kneeling beside Izuku. And I'm sorry you had to experience that terror. But they're alive. You didn't lose them. And now we need to figure out how to handle the aftermath of this. Over the next hour, more heroes arrived. Police, paramedics, hero agency representatives. The Evolutionary Front's members were arrested, treated for their injuries, and transported to secure facilities. Statements were taken, evidence collected, the crime scene processed. Through it all, Izuku sat in a police vehicle, wrapped in a blanket despite not being cold, answering questions in a monotone. Yes, he'd defeated them all alone. Yes, he'd used lethal techniques but pulled his strikes to ensure survival. No, he didn't regret defending his family. The Hero Public Safety Commission sent a representative, a stern woman who looked at Izuku like he was a bomb waiting to explode. This level of violence from a teenager is concerning, she began. This level of violence saved 2 innocent lives and eliminated a dangerous villain organization, All Might countered before Izuku could respond. Young Midoriya acted under extreme emotional distress, believing his family had been murdered. Under the circumstances, his restraint in ensuring no fatalities is commendable, not concerning. The argument continued around him, but Izuku barely processed it. He just wanted to see Rumi and Atsushi, to confirm with his own eyes that they were alive. Finally, as dawn broke over Musutafu, All Might drove Izuku back to the dojo. Recovery Girl met them at the entrance, her small frame radiating exhaustion but satisfaction. "They're stable," she reported. "The poison was sophisticated, quirk-enhanced, and designed to be lethal. But I countered it in time. They'll need 3 days of rest and observation, but they'll make full recoveries." "Can I see them?" Izuku asked, his voice breaking. "Briefly. They're sleeping, and they need their rest." Recovery Girl's expression softened. "But yes, you can see them." Izuku entered the dojo's medical room, a space usually used for treating training injuries, now converted to an intensive care area. Rumi and Atsushi lay in bed side by side, connected to monitoring equipment, their color better than Izuku's last sight of them but still pale. He approached Rumi first, taking her hand carefully. She stirred slightly, her eyes fluttering open. "Izuku?" she whispered. "I'm here," he said, tears streaming freely now. "You're going to be okay. Recovery Girl says you'll be fine." "We thought we were dead," Rumi breathed. "The poison's so fast." "I know, but you survived. You're both so strong, stronger than any poison." Her hand squeezed his weakly. "Did you, the villains?" "Dealt with," Izuku replied. "All of them. They'll never threaten anyone again." Something in his tone made Rumi's eyes sharpen despite her weakness. "Izuku, what did you do?" "What I had to," he replied simply. "Rest now. We'll talk when you're better." He moved to Atsushi's bed next. The old master's eyes opened, immediately focusing with surprising clarity. "You went after them," Atsushi said. "Not a question." "Yes." "How many?" 214. Atsushi was quiet for a long moment. "Fatalities? None. Injuries ranging from minor to severe, but I made sure they'd all survive." "The restraint that took." Atsushi's expression mixed pride and concern. "You could have killed them all. No one would have blamed you, but you chose not to." "You taught me that strength is about more than the ability to destroy," Izuku replied. "I was angry, angrier than I've ever been. But I remembered your lessons: honor, discipline, justice, not vengeance." "I'm proud of you," Atsushi said quietly, "but this action will have consequences. The hero world doesn't look kindly on vigilante justice, even justified." "I know, All Might's already dealing with the commission, but I don't regret it. They tried to kill you and Rumi. I'd do it again." "I know you would," Atsushi replied. "That's what worries me. Your power is extraordinary, Izuku, but power like yours needs to be controlled, directed, used wisely. What you did tonight, it was necessary, but it was also a glimpse of how destructive you could become if you ever truly lost control." "I won't lose control," Izuku promised. "I have too much to protect now. You, Rumi, the future we're building. I won't let darkness consume me." "See that you don't," Atsushi said, his eyes drifting closed. "Now let an old man rest. And Izuku?" "Yes, Sensei?" "Thank you for saving us, for being strong enough to protect what matters." Recovery Girl shooed Izuku out after that, insisting her patients needed uninterrupted rest. He found All Might waiting in the dojo's main hall. "The commission has agreed to a conditional arrangement," the #1 hero reported. "No criminal charges will be filed. The Evolutionary Front was a wanted organization, and your actions eliminated a significant threat. However, there are conditions." "What conditions?" Izuku asked. "First, mandatory psychological evaluation before you can attend UA. They want to ensure you're stable enough to be trusted in a hero school." "Fine. Second, you'll be under observation during your time at UA. Enhanced monitoring, regular check-ins with counselors, restrictions on unauthorized quirk usage." "Also fine." "Third," All Might hesitated, "I've personally vouched for you. I told the commission that you have the potential to be a great hero, that what happened tonight was an isolated incident born of extreme circumstances. I've promised to take personal responsibility for mentoring you, guiding you, ensuring you develop into the kind of hero society needs." Izuku looked at the legendary hero, this man who barely knew him but was willing to stake his reputation on him. "Why? Why would you do that for me?" "Because I see potential in you," All Might replied. "Raw, incredible potential. Yes, you're dangerous. Yes, what you did tonight was extreme, but you also showed restraint when you could have killed. You showed purpose when you could have given in to pure rage. That tells me there's something worth nurturing beneath the power. He smiled. Plus, Atsushi Usagiyama is an old friend. If he saw something worth saving in you, I trust his judgment. I won't let you down, Izuku said. I know you won't. Now, about the UA entrance exam. I'm still taking it, Izuku interrupted firmly. Tomorrow as scheduled. Rumi and Atsushi would want me to. This doesn't change my plans. All Might studied him for a moment, then nodded. Very well. Though I should warn you, after tonight's events, your performance will be watched very carefully. The Commission wants to see how you handle yourself in a controlled combat scenario. Then they're going to see exactly what I'm capable of, Izuku replied, his green eyes hard with determination. I've spent 2 years preparing for this. I'm not backing down now. As the sun rose fully over Musutafu, Izuku stood in the dojo where he'd been reborn, where he'd learned to be more than just a broken street fighter. Tonight, he'd proven his strength. Tomorrow, he'd prove he could be a hero. The warrior's ascension was just beginning. Izuku had 2 hours of sleep before his alarm went off. His body, enhanced by adaptive combat, had already healed the minor injuries from last night's battle. But mental exhaustion was harder to shake. He checked on Rumi and Atsushi, both sleeping peacefully, their vital signs stable. Recovery Girl had stayed the night, ensuring no complications arose. She gave Izuku a knowing look, but said nothing about his determination to take the exam on schedule. The UA entrance exam was being held at a specialized facility on the Academy's extensive grounds. As Izuku approached in his modified training uniform, the dojo's symbol embroidered on the back, he could feel hundreds of fighting spirits gathered ahead. His compass sense was more refined after last night's battle, capable of distinguishing individual power levels with greater precision. Most of the applicants registered as average to moderately strong. A few stood out as notably powerful. One in particular caught his attention, a fighting spirit that burned hot and aggressive, like a wildfire barely contained. Interesting. The entrance exam protocol had been modified this year. All Might had informed him during the drive. Instead of the traditional robot scenario, UA was testing combat adaptability through controlled sparring matches. Applicants would face quirk-enhanced obstacles and simulated villain encounters in random team formations. Translation: they wanted to see how Izuku handled combat in a supervised environment after last night's massacre. Fine. He'd show them exactly what destructive death could do within appropriate bounds. The waiting area was filled with nervous teenagers. Izuku registered their anxiety with detached observation. Most were worried about failing, about not being good enough. None of them had spent last night fighting 200 villains. Applicants, attention! Present Mike's voice boomed across the facility. Welcome to UA's modified entrance examination. Today, you'll be divided into groups of 20 and sent into our urban assault zone. Your task: navigate the area, defeat simulated villains, and accumulate points through successful mission completion. You'll be evaluated on combat effectiveness, strategic thinking, and heroic conduct. The crowd buzzed with discussion. Izuku remained quiet, his compass already assessing potential teammates and obstacles. One more thing, Present Mike continued. This year, we're introducing elite obstacles, specially designed challenges that require exceptional skill to overcome. Defeating these will earn bonus points, but they're significantly more dangerous. Don't bite off more than you can chew, listeners. Groups were assigned randomly, and Izuku found himself in Group 7, along with 19 other applicants, including, "Out of my way! Extras!" A voice snarled, and the aggressive fighting spirit Izuku had earlier pushed through the crowd. A boy with spiky blonde hair and red eyes that burned with competitive fury. I'm getting the top score, so stay out of my way. Izuku's compass read him instantly. Powerful quirk, probably explosion-based given the small detonations crackling in his palms. Strong fighting spirit, genuine skill, but arrogant. Reminded him of his own street fighting days. All aggression and no discipline. Their eyes met, and the blonde's expression shifted to something between interest and challenge. You, he said, focusing on Izuku. You've got the eyes of someone who's actually fought, not these weak extras pretending to be strong. Bakugo Katsuki, Izuku replied, having caught the name on the roster. Your fighting spirit is strong. Let's see if your skills match your confidence. Bakugo grinned, a fierce, almost feral expression. Oh, I like you already. Try not to disappoint me. Group 7 was led to their designated urban assault zone, a manufactured city environment complete with buildings, streets, and strategically placed obstacles. Simulated villains controlled by AI and support equipment would attack from various positions. Begin! Present Mike's voice echoed across the zone. Chaos erupted immediately. Most applicants scattered, trying to find individual challenges to complete. Bakugo blasted forward with his explosion quirk, targeting a cluster of simulated villains with aggressive efficiency. Izuku activated his compass, letting it extend across the entire zone. He could sense the placement of every obstacle, every simulated villain, every elite challenge. The information flooded his mind. Positions, power levels, optimal approach vectors. In the observation room, multiple pro heroes watched the monitors. All Might stood among them alongside Eraserhead, Present Mike, and several members of the Hero Public Safety Commission. There, one commission member said, pointing at Izuku's feed. The Midoriya boy, he's not moving. He's analyzing, Eraserhead observed, his experienced eye catching what others missed. Look at his posture. He's not frozen, he's processing information. On screen, Izuku began moving, but unlike the other applicants' chaotic approaches, his was methodical. He moved through the urban environment like a ghost, his compass guiding him to optimal engagement points. A simulated villain, a large robot with melee capabilities, emerged from an alley. Most applicants would have avoided it or struggled to defeat it. Izuku walked directly toward it. Destructive death, disorder, a blur of motion, strikes too fast for the cameras to fully capture. The robot's armor plating cracked, its joints shattered, its systems failed. It collapsed in pieces within 3 seconds. Incredible precision, Eraserhead muttered. He hit every weak point perfectly, like he knew exactly where to strike. His quirk provides combat analysis abilities, All Might explained. Combined with his training, he can read an opponent's structure and find optimal attack vectors. Izuku continued through the zone. More simulated villains fell to his destructive death techniques. Air-type shockwaves destroying ranged opponents, crown splitter kicks disabling heavy units, explosive flurry combinations overwhelming multiple targets simultaneously. His point total climbed rapidly, but he wasn't just accumulating score. He's helping other applicants, one observer noted with surprise. Indeed, whenever Izuku's compass sensed an applicant in genuine danger, he'd intervene. A girl with a gravity quirk was cornered by 3 simulated villains. Izuku appeared, eliminated the threats with clinical efficiency, then moved on without waiting for thanks. A boy with a hardening quirk was struggling against a flying opponent. Izuku's air-type shockwave brought it down to where the boy could finish it. He's demonstrating heroic conduct, All Might said with satisfaction. Not just fighting for points, but protecting others. Meanwhile, Bakugo was tearing through his own section of the zone with explosive fury. His quirk was powerful, his combat instincts sharp, but his approach lacked finesse. He destroyed simulated villains through overwhelming force rather than technique. His path inevitably crossed with Izuku's. You, Bakugo shouted, blasting toward him. Your score is close to mine. Think you're hot shit because you can punch robots? I think I'm accomplishing the mission efficiently, Izuku replied calmly. If you want to compare scores, we can check at the end. Screw that. I want to see what you've got right now. Bakugo's palms crackled with building explosions. Fight me! Izuku's compass read Bakugo's fighting spirit. Genuine challenge, not malice. The boy wanted to test himself against someone he perceived as strong. It reminded Izuku of his own desperate searches for worthy opponents during his street fighting days. This is an entrance exam, not a tournament, Izuku said, but his stance shifted slightly, instinctively preparing for combat. Are you scared? Bakugo taunted. Before Izuku could respond, the ground shook. Both boys looked up to see an elite obstacle emerging, a massive robot, easily 20 meters tall, with multiple weapon systems and heavy armor. Zero-pointer, someone screamed. Everyone run! Most applicants fled. The zero-pointer was designed to test heroic instinct. Saving others was worth more than defeating it, and it was meant to be nearly indestructible. Finally, a real challenge. Bakugo grinned, launching himself at the massive robot. Izuku's compass read the zero-pointer's structure, analyzed its weaknesses, calculated optimal attack vectors. Then his sense extended to the surrounding area. Several applicants were in the robot's path, frozen in fear. Decision made. He moved faster than he had all day, his quirk surging to match the threat level. This was an opponent actually designed to be formidable. Adaptive combat responded accordingly. Bakugo's explosions scorched the robot's armor, but didn't significantly damage it. He was strong, but not strong enough for this. "Move!" Izuku shouted, appearing beside Bakugo in a burst of speed that made the blonde's eyes widen. "What the?" Izuku didn't explain. He simply attacked. Destructive death. Blue-silver chaotic afterglow. His ultimate technique, used now at controlled power to avoid killing anyone in the vicinity, but with enough force to accomplish the impossible. The air around his strikes shimmered that distinctive blue-silver as his quirk reached peak activation. The combination was a work of art. Each strike targeted a critical structural point identified by his compass. Joints, power cores, stabilizing systems, weapon mounts, all systematically destroyed with surgical precision. The entire assault lasted 12 seconds. When it ended, the 20-meter zero-pointer collapsed. Its systems catastrophically failed, its structure comprehensively dismantled. Silence fell across the urban assault zone. In the observation room, every pro hero and commission member stared at the screens in shock. Did he just... Present mic started. He defeated the zero-pointer. Eraserhead finished, his voice carefully neutral. Solo. In 12 seconds. Impossible, a commission member breathed. That thing was designed to be nearly indestructible. Even pro heroes would struggle with it. His quirk makes him stronger against powerful opponents, All Might explained, though even he looked impressed. The zero-pointer's threat level triggered maximum adaptation. Combined with his destructive death techniques, he smiled slightly. I told you he had potential. On the ground, Bakugo stared at Izuku with an expression mixing awe, fury, and grudging respect. What the hell are you? He demanded. Someone who trained very hard, Izuku replied simply, already moving toward the frozen applicants to ensure they were safe. The exam ended shortly after. No one could top the spectacle of a 16-year-old boy solo destroying the supposedly indestructible zero-pointer. 3 days later, Izuku sat in the dojo's medical room, keeping vigil over Rumi and Atsushi. They were both conscious now, recovering steadily under Recovery Girl's care. He'd told them about the entrance exam, about the zero-pointer, about the inevitable acceptance letter that would arrive. You're going to be the most terrifying first-year UA's ever seen, Rumi said, her voice still weak but gaining strength. I'm so proud of you. Proud and slightly concerned, Atsushi added with a small smile. Destroying the zero-pointer might have been overkill. It was threatening other applicants, Izuku replied. I had to stop it. By completely dismantling it in 12 seconds, Atsushi chuckled, then winced. Still, it proves you've mastered the destructive death style. You've surpassed what I could teach you. Never, Izuku said firmly. Everything I did came from your lessons. I'm just applying them. No, Atsushi corrected gently. You've taken my lessons and made them your own. That's what every student should do. Learn from their master, then exceed them. You've done exactly that. The acceptance letter arrived the next day, delivered personally by All Might. The holographic message from Principal Nezu explained that Izuku had scored highest in the combat evaluation by a significant margin. But more importantly, he'd also scored highly in heroic conduct for his assistance to other applicants. Welcome to UA, young Midoriya, All Might said, his smile genuine. Your journey as a hero student begins now. Izuku looked at the acceptance letter, at the people who'd given him this chance. All Might, Recovery Girl, and through the medical room door, Rumi and Atsushi, his family, chosen and earned through pain and growth. I won't waste this opportunity, he promised. I'll become the kind of hero who protects what matters, who's strong enough that no one I love ever has to suffer again. That's a heavy burden to carry, All Might observed. I know, Izuku replied, his green eyes hard with determination, but I'm strong enough to bear it, and I'm going to get even stronger. The day before the UA term began, Izuku stood at his mother's grave one final time. Rumi accompanied him this time, her hand in his. I'm starting at UA tomorrow, Mom, he said to the gravestone. I found a family who loves me. I found purpose beyond survival. I found strength that comes from protecting others, not just from refusing to fall. He paused. I don't know if he'd be proud of everything I've done, the violence, the darkness I've embraced, but I'm trying to use that strength for something good. I'm trying to be the hero you believed I could be. Rumi squeezed his hand. She'd be proud, she said softly. I know she would be. They stood there in silence for a while, paying respects to the woman whose death had set Izuku on this path. Then they walked away together, toward the future, waiting at UA. Izuku stood at the gates of UA High School, his modified uniform crisp and clean, the dojo's symbol visible on his belongings. His pink-tipped hair caught the morning light, and his scarred hands rested calmly at his sides. His compass sense extended outward, reading the fighting spirits of hundreds of students converging on the school. Most were nervous, excited, hopeful. A few stood out as notably powerful. One in particular, the aggressive spirit he recognized from the entrance exam. Bakugo Katsuki would be in his class, Class 1A. That would be interesting. Another caught his attention, cold, calculating, but with immense power, carefully controlled. Someone who'd also scored highly on the exam, more fighting spirits, each unique, each with their own story. His future classmates, rivals, potential friends. Izuku took a breath, centering himself the way Atsushi had taught him. He thought of Rumi, already establishing herself as a rising pro-hero. He thought of Atsushi, recovered and proud. He thought of his mother, watching from wherever the dead went. Here I come, he said quietly to himself. The warrior's ascension begins now. He walked through the gates, his posture confident and controlled. Other students gave him space. Some recognized him from the exam, others simply sensed the danger he represented. In Class 1A, chaos reigned as students introduced themselves. Bakugo was already making his presence known, aggressive and loud. A boy with glasses was attempting to establish order. A girl with a gravity quirk was trying to calm everyone down. Then Izuku entered. The room didn't exactly fall silent, but the energy shifted. Those with combat experience recognized a predator when they saw one. Bakugo's eyes locked onto him immediately. You, the blonde said, his grin fierce. Finally, I've been waiting to settle things from the exam. There's nothing to settle, Izuku replied calmly, moving to an empty seat. We both passed. We're classmates now. Classmates means we get to compete directly, Bakugo countered. I'm going to prove I'm stronger than you. You're welcome to try, Izuku said, not unkindly. He understood that drive, that need to test yourself against the strong. But competition isn't the same as combat. We're here to learn. Shh, don't lecture me. Before their confrontation could escalate, their homeroom teacher entered. A tired-looking man with long black hair and a distinctive scarf, Eraserhead, one of the heroes who'd observed Izu's entrance exam. Sit down and shut up, Eraserhead said without preamble. I'm Shota Aizawa, your homeroom teacher. Before we begin, understand this. I don't care about your entrance exam scores. I don't care about your reputation or your potential. Here, you prove yourself every single day, or you're expelled. I've expelled entire classes before. Don't give me a reason to do it again. The students tensed. This was different from the welcoming atmosphere they'd expected. Aizawa's eyes scanned the class, lingering on Izuku for a moment longer than the others. We're going to start with a quirk assessment test. You'll demonstrate your abilities in controlled conditions, and I'll evaluate your current level. Change into your gym uniforms and meet me at Field Beta in 10 minutes. As the students filed out to change, Bakugo fell into step beside Izuku. That thing you did at the exam, he said quietly, his competitive fire banked for the moment. That blue-silver technique, what was that? My ultimate move, Izuku replied. Destructive death, blue-silver chaotic afterglow. Destructive death, Bakugo repeated, tasting the words. That's what you call your fighting style? Yes, it's a combination of martial arts and quirk integration that I developed with my master. Your master? Bakugo's eyes sharpened with interest. You were trained by someone. That explains the precision. The average extra just swings their quirk around hoping it works. You fight like you know exactly what you're doing. Because I do, Izuku said simply. Good, Bakugo grinned. That means beating you will actually mean something. At Field Beta, Aizawa had set up various testing stations. Strength assessment, speed trials, precision challenges, endurance evaluation, each designed to push the students' quirks to their limits. Midoriya, Aizawa called. You're up first. Strength assessment. Use your quirk to throw this ball as far as possible. Izuku took the softball, his compass sense automatically analyzing optimal throwing vectors. His quirk, Adaptive Combat, responded to the challenge even though there was no opponent. It adapted to the task of maximizing power output. He wound up channeling his technique through the throw. Destructive Death, Air type. The shockwave from his release propelled the ball with explosive force. The ball sailed through the air, disappearing into the distance. The measuring device calculated the distance. 732 meters, Aizawa announced, his expression carefully neutral. The class erupted in amazed discussion. That was well beyond normal for a first-year student. Bakugo, you're next. Bakugo grabbed a ball, his competitive fury burning bright. Watch this. He threw with an explosive boost. 645 meters, Aizawa read. Impressive, but not quite matching Izuku. The blonde's jaw clenched, but he nodded slightly toward Izuku. Acknowledgement, not surrender. The tests continued. Izuku demonstrated his capabilities across all categories. His speed enhanced by quirk-improved reflexes, his precision honed by years of martial arts training, his endurance built through disciplined conditioning, but he also watched his classmates. The gravity girl Uraraka Ochako showing creative quirk application. The glasses boy Ida Tenya demonstrating exceptional speed. A half-white, half-red-haired boy, Todoroki Shoto, displaying ice powers of remarkable strength. Each one had potential. Each one had their own story. And Izuku would be training alongside them, competing with them, potentially fighting beside them. Final evaluation, Aizawa announced once all tests were complete. Midoriya, Todoroki, and Bakugo, top 3 overall scores. The rest of you need to step up if you want to keep pace. His expression was stern. This isn't a game. Being a hero means constantly pushing your limits. If you're not willing to do that, leave now. No one left. Good. Dismissed for today. Tomorrow we begin real training. As the students dispersed, Izuku found himself approached by the half-white, half-red-haired boy, Todoroki. Your fighting style, Todoroki said without preamble, it's refined, professional level, you've had formal training. Yes, Izuku confirmed, reading Todoroki's fighting spirit with his compass. Powerful, controlled, but with strange internal conflict. I trained under Atsushi Usagiyama for 2 years. The retired pro hero, Todoroki's eyes widened slightly, and your fiancé is the current hero Mirko. You've done your research. I make it a point to know about potential rivals, Todoroki replied. Your entrance exam performance was impressive. Destroying the zero-pointer solo isn't something most pro heroes could manage. It was necessary to protect the other applicants. Perhaps, Todoroki said, but it was also a demonstration of overwhelming power. I'm interested to see how you perform when we're actually challenged. Likewise, Izuku replied. Your ice quirk is formidable. I look forward to testing myself against it. Todoroki nodded and walked away. Bakugo, watching the interaction, scowled. Everyone wants a piece of you, he observed. The mysterious, powerful transfer student with the badass fighting style. It's annoying. I'm not a transfer student. I'm a first year like everyone else. You know what I mean? Bakugo's scowl shifted to something more contemplative. You're different from the extras. You've actually experienced real combat, haven't you? Not just training, real fighting where losing means consequences. Izuku thought of the street fights, the massacre at Jaku warehouses, the desperation that had driven him to that dojo robbery 2 years ago. Yes, he said quietly. I've experienced real combat. Good, Bakugo said. That means when we finally fight, you won't hold back. Never, Izuku promised. When we fight, I'll show you the full extent of destructive death. I'm counting on it. As the sun set on his first day at UA, Izuku walked through the campus grounds, his compass sense extended peacefully. This was a new beginning, a chance to prove he could use his strength for something beyond survival and revenge. His phone buzzed, a message from Rumi. How was your first day, future #1 hero? He smiled, typing back. Interesting. Met some strong opponents. Might have found actual rivals. Don't get too cocky. Save some energy for sparring with me this weekend, always. He thought about the path ahead, the training, the challenges, the inevitable conflicts. UA would push him to his limits and beyond. Good. That's what he needed. His quirk, Adaptive Combat, thrived on challenge. The stronger the opponent, the stronger he became. And in Class 1A, surrounded by Japan's most promising young heroes, he would face challenges that would forge him into something greater. The warrior's ascension, he said to himself, looking up at UA's main building silhouetted against the sunset. It's just beginning. Somewhere in the city, Izuku's green eyes were cold. You can debate philosophy all you want, Ida, but when a villain has a knife to someone's throat, I'm the one who'll save them. Are you? No one had an answer for that. The divide in Class 1A wasn't hostile, but it was real. Half the class gravitated toward Izuku's pragmatic approach. The other half aligned with traditional hero ideology. And in the middle stood students like Todoroki, who simply observed and learned from both sides. Aizawa watched this development with growing concern. He'd taught hundreds of students, but never one who so fundamentally challenged the hero system itself. He's going to be a problem, Aizawa told All Might during a teacher meeting. Midoriya's power is undeniable, but his mindset is dangerous. He sees hero work as warfare, not peacekeeping. Perhaps that's what we need, All Might replied thoughtfully. The world is changing, Aizawa. Villains are becoming bolder, more organized. Traditional heroics may not be enough anymore. So we let a 16-year-old reshape hero society with violence? We guide him, All Might corrected. Young Midoriya has the potential to be the greatest hero of his generation, but you're right that he needs tempering. That's our job as his teachers. What neither of them knew was that Izuku's reputation was spreading far beyond UA's walls. Rumi visited every weekend, much to the class's fascination. The number 5 hero, Mirko, casually walking through UA's halls to spend time with a first-year student created considerable gossip. Your classmates are staring, Rumi observed as they walked through campus grounds, her rabbit ears twitching with amusement. They're always staring, Izuku replied. Between my entrance exam performance and our engagement, I'm apparently fascinating. Can't blame them. You are pretty fascinating. She grinned, grabbing his hand. So, how's hero school treating you? Crushing any hearts with your brooding warrior routine? I'm not brooding. I'm focused. Same thing. She bumped his shoulder playfully. Seriously, though, you doing okay? I heard you're butting heads with some of the teachers. They want me to fight like a traditional hero. I can't. Every instinct Atsushi-sensei trained into me says to end threats decisively, not dance around hoping villains surrender. And they're worried you'll go too far, Rumi understood. It's the same thing I deal with. My fighting style is considered too aggressive, too violent, but it works, and that's what matters. Exactly. Izuku stopped, turning to face her fully. I didn't survive the streets by playing nice. I didn't save you and Atsushi-sensei by holding back. UA wants to sand down my edges, make me fit their mold. Don't let them, Rumi said firmly, cupping his face. You're perfect exactly as you are. Strong, decisive, willing to do what's necessary. The world needs that, even if hero society doesn't want to admit it. He leaned into her touch, finding peace in her unwavering support. I love you. I love you too, warrior, she kissed him softly. Now, want to show me this training facility where you've been terrorizing robots? They spent the afternoons sparring in one of UA's advanced training rooms. The facility's monitoring systems recorded every exchange. Izuku's destructive death techniques flowing against Rumi's devastating kicks, both fighters grinning fiercely as they pushed each other to new heights. In the observation room, several teachers watched in awe. They're perfectly matched, Midnight observed. Different styles, but equivalent power and skill. Look at his adaptation, Aizawa pointed out. Every time Mirko lands a hit, his next defense is better. His quirk is learning from her in real time. And she's learning from him too, All Might added. Watch her footwork. She's incorporating elements of his destructive death style into her own techniques. The sparring session ended with both fighters breathing hard but exhilarated. Rumi pulled Izuku into a fierce kiss, uncaring of the monitoring equipment. Damn, I missed this, she breathed. Fighting someone who can actually keep up. Same, Izuku agreed. The training robots don't provide nearly enough challenge. Well, don't go easy on your classmates to compensate, Rumi warned. They need to be pushed too. That's how they'll get stronger. I don't go easy on anyone, Izuku promised, his smile predatory. If they want to be heroes, they need to earn it. That philosophy would be tested sooner than anyone expected. The attack came during a routine training exercise in downtown Musutafu. Class 1A was split into teams, practicing urban rescue scenarios under All Might's supervision. The exercise was going smoothly until Izuku's compass sense flared with warning. "Everyone down!" he shouted, his quirk reading incoming danger before anyone else could react. The street exploded. Villains emerged from sewers, alleys, and buildings, not random thugs, but organized combatants with coordinated quirks and tactics. Well, well, a woman's voice purred from atop a nearby building. She had silver hair and mismatched eyes, her fighting spirit radiating controlled power. The famous Izuku Midoriya, the boy who massacred 200 villains alone. We've been dying to meet you. All Might immediately moved to protect the students. "Get to safety! This is not a training exercise." But the villains had planned for that. Barriers of black mist cut off escape routes, separating the class into isolated groups. Izuku found himself alone with 3 classmates, Uraraka, Ida, and a nervous-looking boy named Mineta, facing a dozen villains. "Midoriya, what do we do?" Uraraka asked, fear evident in her voice. Izuku's compass read every villain's position and power level. Strong, but not overwhelmingly so. Coordinated, but predictable. This was a test. Someone wanted to see how he'd perform. "Stay behind me," he said calmly, his stance shifting into combat-ready position. "Don't interfere. There are 12 of them!" Ida protested. "We should work together." I said, "Stay behind me," Izuku repeated, his voice carrying absolute authority. The villains attacked simultaneously. Fire, ice, physical enhancement, ranged projectiles, a coordinated assault meant to overwhelm through variety. Destructive death. Compass needle, Izuku's quirk extended, reading every attack vector before the strikes fully formed. He moved through the assault like water flowing around stones, his body adapting to each threat in real time. Destructive death. Disorder, a blur of motion. Precise strikes targeting joints, pressure points, vital areas. 3 villains dropped in the first exchange, unconscious before they hit the ground. "He's fast," one villain shouted. "Switch 2. Destructive death. Air-type shockwave punches sent 4 more villains flying backward, their bodies crashing into walls with bone-breaking force. Izuku didn't pause, didn't hesitate. Each movement flowed into the next, his martial arts mastery on full display. "Impossible," another villain breathed. "He's just one kid." Destructive death, crown splitter, an axe kick from above, cratering the street and creating a shockwave that knocked the remaining villains off their feet. Izuku landed among them, finishing each with clinical efficiency. The entire fight lasted 17 seconds. Behind him, his classmates stared in shock. You didn't even use your full power," Uraraka whispered. "They weren't worth it," Izuku replied, already scanning for the next threat. His compass sense located All Might fighting a larger group of villains several blocks away. Other students were scattered across the attack zone, some fighting, some hiding. "We need to regroup," Ida said, recovering his composure. "Follow proper evacuation protocols." "No," Izuku interrupted. "We need to help the others." His eyes found the silver-haired woman still watching from the rooftop. "And I need answers." He moved before anyone could stop him, his enhanced speed carrying him to the rooftop in seconds. The woman smiled as he landed. "Impressive," she said. "The reports didn't exaggerate. You really are as strong as they claimed." "Who sent you?" Izuku demanded. This attack was too coordinated to be random. "So perceptive, we represent interested parties who've heard about your incident with the Evolutionary Front. Wanted to see if you were as dangerous as the rumors suggested. You attacked my classmates to test me?" Izuku's voice went deadly quiet, his quirk already adapting to her power level. "Oh, we're not here to kill anyone. Just to observe, to see if you're worth recruiting." Her smile widened. "There are organizations that appreciate warriors like you, people who understand that true strength shouldn't be constrained by Hero Society's weak morality. I'm not interested in joining villains. Aren't you, though? You've killed before. You don't believe in redemption or second chances. You see the world in terms of threats and acceptable casualties." She leaned forward. "You're already thinking like us, Midoriya. We're just offering you the freedom to act on those instincts without pretending to be something you're not." Izuku's compass read her fighting spirit. Powerful, experienced, genuinely dangerous. And beneath her words, he sensed truth. She wasn't wrong about his methods aligning more with villains than traditional heroes, but she was wrong about one thing. "I don't fight for freedom," Izuku said quietly. I fight to protect my family, my friends, the innocent. Your organization threatens that, which makes you an enemy. Such a shame, the woman sighed. We could have destructive death, annihilation type. Izuku closed the distance in an instant, his full power channeled into a devastating palm strike. The woman barely blocked, her own quirk activating, some kind of hardening that turned her skin metallic. The impact still sent her flying backward, crashing through the rooftop structure. You're fast, she coughed, blood trickling from her mouth. But I'm faster than those street thugs you massacred. She proved it, moving with professional speed and precision. Her quirk enhanced both offense and defense, making her a genuinely challenging opponent. They exchanged blows across the rooftop, Izuku's destructive death techniques meeting her refined combat style. But with each exchange, adaptive combat worked its magic. Izuku's body learned her patterns, adapted to her quirk's properties, optimized his counters. Within 30 seconds, he was matching her. Within a minute, he was surpassing her. Impossible, she gasped, her metallic defense cracking under his strikes. You're getting stronger mid-fight. That's what I do, Izuku replied, and unleashed blue-silver chaotic afterglow. The combination lasted 8 seconds. When it ended, the woman lay broken on the rooftop, conscious but thoroughly defeated. Tell whoever sent you, Izuku said coldly, standing over her, that I'm not interested in their recruitment, and if they threaten my classmates again, I won't stop at incapacitation. Sirens wailed in the distance. Pro-heroes were arriving to handle the aftermath. Izuku returned to his classmates, finding them huddled together but safe. Is it over? Uraraka asked. For now, Izuku replied, his compass sense confirming no immediate threats remained. Everyone okay? They were shaken but unharmed. All Might appeared moments later, having defeated the main villain force, his presence reassuring even in his weakened state. Young Midoriya, All Might said, his tone carefully controlled. Did you just fight that woman alone? Yes. She was recruiting for some villain organization. I declined. Izuku's expression was cold. They targeted UA students to test me. That's unacceptable. Indeed it is, All Might agreed. But we'll discuss your decision to engage alone rather than retreating to safety later. The aftermath of the attack consumed the next week. Parents were concerned, the media demanded answers, UA implemented enhanced security measures, and Izuku found himself in the principal's office, facing Nezu's unsettlingly intelligent gaze. That woman you defeated, Midoriya, has been identified as Kaida Tsukino, a wanted A-rank villain with 17 confirmed kills. You subdued her in less than 2 minutes. She was strong, but not strong enough, Izuku replied simply. Indeed. Nezu sipped his tea thoughtfully. The problem, from UA's perspective, is that you engaged a dangerous villain alone rather than prioritizing civilian, in this case, student safety. My classmates were safe. I verified that before engaging. But you couldn't have known that with certainty. What if the attack had been a diversion? What if other villains had targeted the students you left behind? My compass sense would have detected any additional threats, Izuku explained. I can read fighting spirits across several city blocks. There were no other villains in range of my classmates. Nezu's eyes gleamed. Fascinating. Your sensory quirk aspect is more developed than our initial assessments indicated. He set down his teacup. However, that doesn't address the fundamental issue. You're being trained as a hero, Midoriya. That means learning to work within the system, to coordinate with other heroes, to follow proper protocols. Protocols that would have let Tsukino escape while we waited for backup. Perhaps. Or perhaps backup would have arrived quickly enough to capture her without putting yourself at risk. Nezu leaned forward. You're extraordinarily powerful, Midoriya, but power without discipline leads to tragedy. UA's purpose is to teach you that discipline. Atsushi-sensei already taught me discipline, Izuku replied. What UA seems to want is compliance. There's a difference between discipline and obedience, Nezu acknowledged, and you're right that we may be conflating the two in your case. But consider this, every hero who operates alone becomes a target. Every hero who refuses to coordinate becomes a liability. You may be strong enough to survive alone now, but villains will adapt. They'll study your methods, find your weaknesses, attack what you care about. That struck home. Izuku thought of Rumi, of Atsushi, of the poison attack that had nearly killed them both. I understand your point, he said quietly. Good. Then understand this. I'm not asking you to become weak or to fight like someone you're not. I'm asking you to be smart, to recognize when cooperation makes you stronger, not weaker. Nezu smiled, somehow managing to make the expression both reassuring and slightly terrifying. You have a tendency to see the world as you versus everyone else, but your classmates, your teachers, even the hero system you disdain, we're not your enemies. We're potential allies, if you'd let us be. Izuku left that meeting with much to consider. Nezu's words echoed in his mind over the following days, especially during combat training where he watched his classmates work together to overcome challenges. Bakugo and Todoroki, despite their contrasting personalities, coordinated their quirks to devastating effect. Uraraka and Ida combined mobility and gravity manipulation for creative tactics. Even students with seemingly weak quirks found ways to contribute through teamwork, and Izuku fought alone, because that's what he'd always done. You're overthinking, Rumi said during their weekend sparring session. I can see it in your stance. Nezu thinks I need to learn teamwork, Izuku admitted, blocking one of her kicks. That fighting alone makes me vulnerable. He's not wrong, Rumi replied, pressing her attack. I work alone too, but that's a choice based on my style and personality. You fight alone because you don't trust others to keep up. That's different. Can you blame me? Most heroes I've met couldn't handle a quarter of what I deal with. True, but your classmates aren't most heroes. Some of them have serious potential. She landed a solid hit, making him stumble. You're so focused on being the strongest that you're not seeing the value in collaboration. I collaborate with you because I can match you. But what about when you face someone even I can't handle? What if there's a threat that requires more than raw power? Rumi's expression softened. I'm not saying become a team player overnight. Just consider that maybe you don't have to carry everything alone. Her words resonated. That night, Izuku lay awake thinking about his journey. From street fighter to dojo thief to trained warrior to UA student, each phase had required adaptation. Maybe this was another evolution his growth demanded. The next day during combat training, when Aizawa assigned team exercises, Izuku didn't protest. He was paired with Bakugo and Todoroki against a simulated villain scenario, and for the first time, he genuinely tried to coordinate. It was awkward. 3 alphas trying to work together inevitably created friction, but it also revealed something interesting. Your compass thing, Bakugo said as they planned their approach. Can you read the entire battlefield? Yes. Every villain position, power level, movement pattern. Then you call targets, Todoroki suggested. We'll handle execution based on your tactical analysis. It was a simple division of labor, but it worked. Izuku's sensory quirk provided perfect intelligence. Bakugo's explosions handled crowd control. Todoroki's ice created environmental advantages. Together, they completed the exercise in record time. Not bad, Bakugo admitted grudgingly afterward. Still think I could have done it alone, but your intel made it easier. Efficient teamwork, Todoroki agreed. We should practice this formation. Aizawa watched from the sidelines, the ghost of a smile on his face. Progress, finally. But this fragile development toward cooperation would be tested by forces far darker than training exercises. All for One watched the footage of Izuku defeating Tsukino for the 3rd time, his ancient eyes gleaming with interest. Magnificent, he murmured. Look at his adaptation, Tomura. The way his body evolved mid-combat to counter her quirk. And that final technique, such refined brutality. Shigaraki Tomura stood beside his master, scratching his neck irritably. He's just another hero brat. I could turn him to dust. Could you? All for One's smile was indulgent. His quirk makes him stronger against powerful opponents. Your decay is certainly powerful, but I wonder if his adaptation would counter it before you could fully activate your ability. The thought made Shigaraki's scratching more aggressive. Then why do you care about him? Because he's exactly what I've been searching for, All for One replied, rewinding the footage to show Izuku's blue-silver chaotic afterglow technique. A warrior who fights not for ideology or justice, but for pure strength, who kills without hesitation, who sees the world in terms of power dynamics rather than moral absolutes. Sounds like a villain. Precisely, but one who's convinced himself he's a hero because he protects what he loves. All for One's expression was contemplative. I've spent decades collecting quirks, building power, creating an empire of darkness. But this boy has stumbled upon something I've never achieved, a quirk that genuinely evolves through combat, that becomes stronger by facing strong opponents. You want to steal his quirk. I want to recruit him, All for One corrected. Stealing his quirk would be wasteful. It's tied to his combat instincts, his martial training, his warrior spirit. Separated from him, it would be a fraction of its current power. He closed the video. No, I want Izuku Midoriya to join us willingly. To recognize that villain or hero are just labels and that true power transcends such petty distinctions. He'll never join us, Shigaraki said flatly. He's got that rabbit or girlfriend and his precious dojo. He's too attached to his family. Then we'll test those attachments, All for One replied, his smile widening. Everyone has a breaking point, Tamura. Everyone. We just need to find his. Over the following months, the League of Villains operations shifted focus. Instead of random attacks, they began targeting specific locations and people connected to Izuku Midoriya. The first attack hit a charity event he was attending. The villains were stronger than usual, coordinated and well-equipped. Rumi defeated them, but the message was clear. They knew who mattered to Izuku. The second attack targeted Atsushi's dojo while Izuku was at UA. Only the old master's skill and the intervention of nearby heroes prevented casualties. But the intent was obvious. Nowhere was safe. The third attack came during a UA field trip. Villains ambushed the class, specifically targeting students Izuku had shown concern for. He defeated the attackers easily, but the pattern was undeniable. Someone was studying him, learning what he cared about, preparing to strike where it would hurt most. It's All for One, All Might confirmed during an emergency meeting with Izuku and key UA staff. The attack patterns, the resources being deployed, the strategic targeting, it bears his signature. Who is All for One? Izuku asked, his voice dangerously quiet. All Might explained. The ancient villain, the quirk thief, the monster who'd terrorized Japan for generations. The enemy All Might had thought defeated, but who'd clearly survived in the shadows. He's the most dangerous being alive, All Might finished. And if he's interested in you, Midoriya, then you're in grave danger. Let him come, Izuku replied coldly. I don't hide from threats. This isn't street thugs or organized villain groups, Aizawa interjected. All for One has hundreds of quirks, decades of combat experience, power that rivals or exceeds the top heroes. Then he'll be the strongest opponent I've ever faced, Izuku said, and something in his voice made everyone in the room shiver. Perfect. My quirk thrives against powerful opponents. If this All for One wants to test me, I'll show him exactly what I'm capable of. Young Midoriya, you don't understand. I understand perfectly, Izuku interrupted All Might. A powerful villain is targeting people I care about to get to me. The solution is simple. I eliminate him before he can hurt anyone. That's not heroic thinking. I don't care. Izuku's composure cracked, revealing the rage beneath. I've lost too much already. My mother, my childhood, nearly Rumi and Atsushi-sensei. I won't lose anyone else because I played by rules villains ignore. If All for One wants war, I'll give him war. The room fell silent. Nezu studied Izuku with those disturbingly intelligent eyes. You're serious, the principal said quietly. You genuinely intend to hunt down All for One? Yes. Even knowing it might cost your life? My life means nothing if I can't protect what matters. Izuku's green eyes were hard as steel. I've been preparing for this my entire time at UA, getting stronger, refining my techniques, pushing my limits. I didn't know it would be All for One specifically, but I knew eventually I'd face an enemy that required everything I had. This is madness, Aizawa muttered. This is reality, Izuku countered. All for One won't stop. He'll keep attacking, keep testing, keep threatening until either I submit or he's destroyed. I choose destruction. All Might looked at this boy, this warrior who wore a student's uniform but carried the weight of mountains on his shoulders. He saw determination that bordered on obsession, power that terrified even experienced heroes, and a willingness to do whatever was necessary that violated every principle hero society was built on. He also saw a kid who'd lost his mother, who'd fought alone in darkness, who'd found family and would burn the world to protect them. We'll help you. All Might said finally, if you're determined to face All for One, then you'll do it with support, strategy, and backup, not alone. I work better alone. Too bad, Aizawa interjected. You're a UA student, which means you follow our lead on this. We're not sending you into a suicide mission solo just because you've got a death wish. For a moment, tension crackled. Then Izuku relaxed slightly. Fine, but understand this. When the moment comes when I'm facing All for One directly, don't interfere. That fight is mine. Agreed, All Might said, though his expression remained troubled. But until that moment, you train with us. You prepare properly. You don't rush into battle half-ready because your pride demands it. Izuku nodded curtly. It was the best compromise they'd get. That night, lying in his dorm room, Izuku stared at the ceiling and felt his quirk pulse with anticipation. Adaptive combat was already responding to the threat All for One represented, preparing his body for the ultimate confrontation. Somewhere in the darkness, an ancient villain plotted his recruitment or destruction, and between them, the warrior's path led inexorably toward collision. The Shadow War had begun. The attacks escalated over the following months. All for One's strategy became clear. He wasn't trying to kill Izuku's loved ones. He was demonstrating capability, showing that he could strike anywhere, anytime, and only All for One's restraint kept them alive. It was psychological warfare, and it was working. Izuku became obsessive about security. He installed monitoring equipment at the dojo. He insisted Rumi carry emergency beacons. He used his compass sense compulsively, always scanning for threats. Sleep became difficult. Training became more brutal. His classmates noticed the change. "You look like shit," Bakugo said bluntly during lunch. "Thanks for the observation. I'm serious. When's the last time you slept a full night?" Bakugo's expression was uncharacteristically concerned. "You're gonna burn out before you even face this All for One asshole." "I'll sleep when everyone I care about is safe." "Yeah, and when will that be?" Bakugo leaned forward. "Because from where I'm sitting, you're making yourself weaker by refusing to rest. Your quirk makes you stronger in combat, but it can't fix exhaustion." Todoroki joined the conversation, his mismatched eyes serious. "Bakugo's right. I've been watching your performance in training. Your reaction times are slower, your techniques less precise. You're degrading." "I'm fine." "You're not," Rumi said, appearing beside their table with her hero costume drawing every eye in the cafeteria. "And we need to talk. Now." She dragged Izuku outside, her expression furious. "What the hell are you doing to yourself?" she demanded once they were alone. "I got a call from Atsushi. He says you're training until you collapse, that you're pushing so hard you're injuring yourself, that you're not eating properly or sleeping. I need to be ready. You need to be alive." Rumi grabbed his shoulders, forcing him to meet her eyes. "This isn't preparation, Izuku. This is self-destruction. You're so terrified of losing people that you're losing yourself. If I'm not strong enough, you're already strong enough." Her voice cracked with emotion. "You defeated 200 villains alone. You destroyed the zero-pointer in seconds. You're the most powerful first-year UA has ever seen. But you're treating every day like it's your last, and it's killing you." Izuku felt something break inside him. The walls he'd built around his fear crumbled, and suddenly he was shaking, tears streaming down his face. "I can't lose you," he whispered. "I can't. Not you. Not Atsushi-sensei. Not anyone. I've already lost too much. If All for One hurts you because of me, then I'll kick his ass and laugh about it," Rumi interrupted, pulling him into a fierce embrace. "I'm not some helpless civilian warrior. I'm the number 5 hero. I can protect myself. And more importantly, I can protect you when you need it. I'm supposed to be the strong one. We're both strong, you idiot. That's why we work." She pulled back, cupping his face. "But strength isn't just about fighting. It's about knowing when to rest, when to trust others, when to let people help you. You've been carrying everything alone for so long, you've forgotten what it means to share the burden. I don't know how to do anything else." "Then learn," she said firmly. "Starting now. You're gonna sleep tonight, minimum 8 hours. You're gonna eat 3 full meals tomorrow. You're gonna take a day off from extra training and actually relax, and you're gonna trust that the people who love you can handle themselves while you recover." Rumi. "That's not a request, Midoriya. That's an order from your fiancé who loves you and refuses to watch you destroy yourself." Her expression softened. "Please, Izuku, for me, take care of yourself the way you take care of everyone else." He nodded slowly, exhaustion crashing over him now that someone had given him permission to feel it. "Okay, he whispered. Okay, I'll try. Good. She kissed him softly. Now come on, I'm staying at UA tonight to make sure you actually sleep. That night, for the first time in weeks, Izuku slept through until morning. Rumi stayed beside him, her presence a comfort that quieted his nightmares. And when he woke, he felt more like himself than he had in months. It wasn't a complete recovery. His obsessive need to protect remained, but Rumi's intervention had pulled him back from the edge of self-destruction. Over the next week, Izuku slowly rebalanced. He still trained intensely, but he also rested properly. He still monitored for threats, but he didn't let paranoia consume him. He still prepared for All for One, but he did it sustainably. And crucially, he started accepting help. All Might began personally training him in combat tactics against opponents with multiple quirks. Aizawa drilled him in countering different quirk types. Even his classmates contributed, their varied abilities forcing him to adapt in new ways. Bakugo's explosions taught him to counter erratic attack patterns. Todoroki's ice and fire combination forced him to adapt to extreme temperature changes. Uraraka's gravity manipulation challenged his spatial awareness. Each training session refined his adaptive combat, making his quirk's evolution more versatile. You're improving, Aizawa admitted after a particularly intense session. More importantly, you're improving sustainably. That's the difference between a warrior and a berserker. Izuku nodded, too winded to speak, but understanding the lesson, the preparation continued through winter into spring. Class 1A's first year was drawing to a close, and with it came the sports festival, UA's premier event showcasing student abilities to the entire nation. This is your chance, All Might told Izuku privately. All for One will be watching. Show him what you're truly capable of, but do it smart. Make him understand that you're not someone to be threatened or recruited. You're someone to be feared. The sports festival arrived with massive fanfare. Thousands of spectators, dozens of pro heroes, media coverage across every channel. Class 1A entered the stadium to roaring crowds, each student preparing to prove themselves. Izuku's compass sense extended across the entire venue, reading every fighting spirit present. Pro heroes in the stands, students from other classes, civilians with no combat ability whatsoever. And somewhere out there, he knew, All for One or his agents were watching. Good. Let them watch. The preliminary round was an obstacle course designed to test versatility and quick thinking. Most students struggled with the varied challenges. Izuku completed it in under 30 seconds, using air-type shockwaves to clear obstacles and his enhanced speed to maintain momentum. He finished first. Todoroki took second, Bakugo third. The cavalry battle followed, teams of 4 trying to steal headbands while protecting their own. Izuku teamed with Bakugo, Todoroki, and Uraraka, their combined power overwhelming all opposition. This is too easy, Bakugo complained after their victory. Where's the real challenge? The finals, Izuku replied, watching the bracket being displayed. He'd be facing progressively stronger opponents, culminating in either Bakugo or Todoroki in the championship match. Perfect. His first match was against a student from Class 1B with a metal manipulation quirk. The fight lasted 6 seconds. Destructive death, disorder combination, 3 strikes, opponent unconscious. His second match faced a girl with a vine quirk that could regrow faster than he could destroy it. This one required more thought. Izuku used Crown Splitter to create an opening, then Annihilation type to strike the root source of her quirk activation. Fight time, 14 seconds. The quarterfinals put him against Ida, whose speed was genuinely impressive, but Compass Needle predicted his movements perfectly, and Ida's linear attack patterns made him predictable. Izuku let him tire himself out, then ended the match with a precise air-type strike. Time 28 seconds. The semifinals, Bakugo Katsuki. The entire stadium fell silent as they faced each other on the arena floor. 2 of Class 1A's strongest finally getting their long-anticipated confrontation. I've been waiting for this, Bakugo said, his palms already crackling with building explosions. No holding back. No pulling punches. I want to see everything you've got. You sure? Izuku asked, his stance shifting into perfect combat form. I don't want to humiliate you in front of everyone. Bakugo's grin was feral. Try it, asshole. Let's see if you're as strong as everyone says. The match began. Bakugo exploded forward immediately, his attack pattern aggressive and unrelenting. explosions from every angle, using his quirk for mobility and offense simultaneously. It was impressive, genuinely challenging, the kind of fight that would push most opponents to their limits. But Izuku had fought 200 villains alone. Bakugo's power was formidable, but his pattern was readable. Compass needle tracked every explosion before it detonated. Adaptive combat adjusted to the heat and shockwaves. Izuku's destructive death style found gaps in Bakugo's assault that the blonde didn't even know existed. They traded blows across the arena, each exchange faster than the last. Bakugo was good, better than Izuku had expected. His combat instincts were sharp, his quirk usage creative, his determination absolute. But determination couldn't overcome the fundamental gap in their capabilities. Destructive death, blue-silver chaotic afterglow. Izuku unleashed his ultimate technique at 70% power, enough to demonstrate mastery without seriously injuring his classmate. The combination was beautiful and terrible, each strike perfectly placed, each movement flowing seamlessly into the next. Bakugo blocked the first few exchanges, his explosive power creating defensive blasts. But Izuku's technique adapted mid-assault, finding new angles, exploiting micro-openings, overwhelming through sheer skill and refined power. The assault ended with Bakugo on his knees, conscious but thoroughly defeated. Damn, Bakugo breathed, a savage grin on his face despite his loss. That was incredible. You really are a monster. You fought well, Izuku replied, offering his hand. Better than anyone I've faced at UA. Bakugo took the hand, pulling himself up. I'll beat you next time, I swear it. I look forward to it. The finals, Todoroki Shodo. This match was different. Where Bakugo fought with aggressive passion, Todoroki approached with calculated precision. His ice quirk created environmental advantages, forcing Izuku to adapt to terrain changes while avoiding temperature extremes. I've studied your style extensively, Todoroki said as they circled each other. Your compass sense predicts attacks. Your adaptive combat evolves mid-fight. Your techniques prioritize efficiency over flash. I've prepared counters for all of it. Preparation is good, Izuku acknowledged. But can you adapt when your preparations fail? The fight was technical, almost chess-like in its strategic complexity. Todoroki created ice barriers and traps, forcing Izuku to choose between direct assault and tactical maneuvering. Each time Izuku found a counter, Todoroki adjusted his approach. But there was something off about Todoroki's fighting. He relied exclusively on his ice quirk, never using the fire side everyone knew he possessed. Why are you limiting yourself? Izuku asked during a brief exchange. You have fire, but you're not using it. That's not preparation, that's handicapping yourself. My fire is my father's power, Todoroki replied coldly. I refuse to use it. That's stupid, Izuku said bluntly. You're throwing away half your potential because of family issues. Your quirks are yours, not your father's. Rejecting them is rejecting yourself. You don't understand. I understand perfectly, Izuku interrupted, his strikes becoming more aggressive. You're so focused on rebelling against your father that you're sabotaging yourself. That's not strength. That's weakness disguised as principle. Something in Todoroki's expression cracked. The ice around them began melting as heat radiated from his left side. You want my fire? Todoroki's voice was raw. Fine, let's see if you can handle it. The arena erupted in flames and ice simultaneously, Todoroki finally using his full power. The temperature swung between extremes, creating a chaotic battlefield that would overwhelm most opponents. Izuku's adaptive combat responded immediately, his body adjusting to handle both heat and cold. His compass sense cut through the environmental chaos, tracking Todoroki's position perfectly. And for the first time since entering UA, Izuku felt genuinely challenged. This was what he'd been seeking, an opponent who pushed him, who forced his quirk to evolve, who made him work for victory. Todoroki at full power was magnificent, his dual quirks creating attack combinations that were genuinely innovative, but magnificent wasn't enough to overcome the gap between them. Destructive death, final form preparation. Izuku had never used his ultimate technique at full power, not against the evolutionary front, not in the entrance exam, not even in his most intense training sessions. He'd always held back, afraid of what total commitment might reveal about his capacity for violence. But Todoroki deserved his best. This fight deserved his best. Blue-silver chaotic afterglow, Izuku whispered, and let the technique flow at 100%. The air itself seemed to shimmer blue-silver, reacting to the concentration of power. Every lesson Atsushi had taught him, every refinement he'd achieved through countless hours of training, every evolution his quirk had undergone, all of it channeled into one perfect assault. The combination was transcendent. Strike, pivot, strike, flow, adapt, strike, redirect, strike, evolve, strike. Each movement seamlessly connected to the next, creating a continuous chain of devastation that moved faster than the eye could follow. Todoroki tried to defend. His ice barriers shattered. His fire blasts were redirected. His dual quirk coordination was overwhelmed by technique so refined it seemed supernatural. The assault ended with Todoroki unconscious on the arena floor. Izuku standing over him, breathing hard but victorious. The stadium erupted in cheers. Present Mike's commentary was barely audible over the roar. Pro heroes in the stands leaned forward, discussing what they just witnessed in hushed, awed tones. All Might smiled with pride and concern in equal measure, and somewhere in the shadows, All for One watched with growing obsession. "Magnificent," the ancient villain murmured to himself. "Absolutely magnificent. I must have him." Izuku accepted his sports festival victory medal from All Might himself, the symbolism not lost on anyone present. The current symbol of peace, passing recognition to someone who might one day surpass him. In the days following the festival, Izuku's reputation solidified. He was no longer just the powerful first year. He was the martial hero, a student who dominated UA's premier event through sheer skill and refined brutality. Job offers flooded in from hero agencies. Media requests for interviews, fan clubs forming. His fame was approaching levels usually reserved for established pros, but Izuku ignored it all. Because 3 days after the sports festival, he received a message that made his blood run cold. It was a video file, sent anonymously to his personal phone. He opened it in the privacy of his dorm room. The video showed Rumi, unconscious and bound in what looked like a warehouse. Atsushi similarly restrained beside her. Both alive but clearly captured. Then All for One's voice, distorted but unmistakable. "Hello, young Midoriya. Impressive performance at the sports festival. You've proven yourself worthy of my personal attention. I have people you care about. If you want them back alive, come to these coordinates alone. No heroes. No backup. Just you and me. Let's see if your power is genuine or merely theatrical. You have 24 hours." The video ended with coordinates displayed on screen. Izuku stared at his phone, every muscle in his body rigid with rage. This was it. The confrontation he'd been preparing for. All for One had finally made his move. The smart thing would be to inform All Might, to coordinate with pro heroes to plan a proper rescue operation. But Izuku had never been good at doing the smart thing when people he loved were threatened. He grabbed his phone, texted Rumi and Atsushi knowing they couldn't respond, then suited up in his combat gear. Not his hero costume. This wasn't a hero mission. This was war. His compass sense extended to its maximum range, reading toward the coordinates. Hundreds of fighting spirits gathered there, some powerful, most average. And at the center, one spirit that burned with ancient, terrible power. All for One was waiting. "I'm coming," Izuku said to the empty room, his green eyes burning with determination and rage, "and you're going to regret threatening my family." He left through his window, moving through the night toward the coordinates, toward the ultimate confrontation, toward the fight that would define everything. The warrior's ascension was reaching its climax, and in the darkness ahead, an ancient evil smiled, confident in his inevitable victory. Neither of them knew yet that this battle would reshape the hero world forever. The coordinates led to an abandoned industrial complex on Musatafu's outskirts. Massive, isolated, perfect for a confrontation without civilian interference. Izuku approached with his compass fully extended, reading every fighting spirit within a kilometer radius. 237 villains scattered throughout the complex. Some strong, most average, organized into defensive positions, waiting for his arrival. And at the center, in the main warehouse, two presences he recognized. Rumi and Atsushi, their fighting spirits dimmed but alive. And beside them, that ancient, overwhelming power that could only be All for One. Izuku stopped at the complex's entrance, analyzing his approach options. Direct assault would trigger coordinated response. Stealth might work, but All for One clearly expected him. This was a test, a demonstration, a recruitment pitch disguised as combat. Fine, he'd play along. but on his terms. Destructive Death, Compass Needle, Maximum Extension. Izuku's sensory quirk expanded beyond anything he'd previously achieved, mapping the entire complex in perfect detail. Every villain's position, every weapon, every quirk signature. The complete battlefield downloaded into his consciousness in seconds. Then he moved. The outer guards never saw him coming. 10 villains positioned around the perimeter, their attention focused outward for approaching heroes. Izuku appeared among them like a ghost, disorder combinations dropping them in seconds. He didn't kill them. All for One was watching, testing his restraint. But incapacitation was more than sufficient. The second defensive line, 20 villains with ranged quirks positioned on the warehouse rooftops. They spotted him approaching and opened fire with projectiles, energy blasts, and elemental attacks. Destructive Death, Airtight Barrage. Izuku unleashed a wall of shockwave punches, each one precisely targeted to intercept incoming attacks. The air between him and the rooftop positions shimmered with compressed force, every projectile destroyed or deflected mid-flight. Then he leaped. Enhanced strength carried him to rooftop level in a single bound, Crown Splitter descending on the nearest cluster of villains. The impact cratered the roof, shockwaves knocking defenders off their feet. He moved through them like a natural disaster. Disorder here, annihilation. Type there, explosive flurry to handle the ones trying to flee. 30 seconds of concentrated violence and the rooftop was clear. Inside the complex, alarm bells rang. The remaining villains mobilized, abandoning their defensive positions to swarm toward his location. Good, let them come. Izuku dropped into the complex's main courtyard where 100 villains converged from multiple directions. They attacked with coordinated tactics, combining quirks for maximum effect. It didn't matter. His adaptive combat had faced overwhelming numbers before. 200 villains at the evolutionary front. This was familiar territory, and he'd grown significantly stronger since then. Blue-silver chaotic afterglow at sustained output. Instead of his usual burst assault, Izuku maintained the technique across extended duration. The blue-silver shimmer surrounded him constantly, each strike flowing into the next without pause. He became a whirlwind of precise devastation, moving through the villain horde like a blade through water. Villains fell in waves. Those with enhancement quirks found their boosted strength insufficient against his technique. Those with elemental abilities discovered their attacks predicted and countered before full activation. Those with transformation quirks learned that changing form didn't matter when every weak point was mapped by his compass. The courtyard became a battlefield littered with unconscious bodies. Izuku stood in the center, breathing hard but still standing, still fighting, still advancing. 97 villains defeated. 140 remaining between him and the main warehouse. He kept moving. The warehouse approaches were fortified with villain elites, All for One's strongest subordinates, each with genuinely dangerous quirks and professional combat experience. They attacked in coordinated teams, using actual tactics instead of mindless aggression. Izuku's quirk surged in response. Adaptive combat loved strong opponents, and these villains were finally worthy of the name. His body optimized itself in real time, speed increasing, power refining, technique evolving. A villain with a blade quirk that could extend and retract at will engaged him in close combat. Her skill was impressive, her strikes precise and deadly. Izuku matched her for a dozen exchanges, learning her patterns, then countered with disorder combination that shattered her blade at its molecular weak point. A pair of brothers with combination quirks creating explosive barriers tried to trap him. His compass predicted their quirk activation sequence, and he struck before they could complete it. Annihilation type to one, Crown Splitter to the other. A woman with a gravity manipulation quirk similar to Uraraka's, but far more powerful, tried to crush him. His enhanced strength, already adapted to resist Todoroki's dual extremes, resisted the pressure. He walked through her increased gravity field like it was nothing. Air-type shockwave ending her contribution. One by one, All for One's elite fell. Some unconscious, some with broken bones, all thoroughly defeated. Izuku's power was undeniable, his technique flawless, his determination absolute. Finally, he stood before the main warehouse entrance. 197 villains defeated. 40 remaining inside with Rumi, Atsushi, and All for One. He kicked the door open. The warehouse interior was vast, dimly lit, with Rumi and Atsushi bound in the center. 40 villains surrounded them in defensive formation, and behind them all, seated on a throne-like chair, was All for One. The ancient villain was physically unremarkable, average height, wearing a black suit and mask that hid his features. But his presence was overwhelming. Power radiated from him like heat from a furnace, his fighting spirit so immense that Izuku's compass nearly recoiled from reading it. "Magnificent entrance," All for One said, his voice cultured and amused. "You've defeated 197 of my subordinates without killing a single one. Such restraint, such control. I'm impressed." "Let them go," Izuku said flatly, his eyes locked on Rumi and Atsushi. They were conscious, gagged, but unharmed, their expressions mixing relief at seeing him with terror at his presence. "Of course. That's why we're here after all, to negotiate terms." All for One gestured, and the villains surrounding Rumi and Atsushi stepped back. "I'll release them unharmed. All you have to do is join me." "Not interested." "Hear me out," All for One continued, unfazed by the rejection. "You're wasted as a hero, young Midoriya. Your power, your techniques, your willingness to do what's necessary. These are qualities Hero Society fears and suppresses. But with me, you could be truly free. No restrictions, no moral hand-wringing, no pretense. Just pure strength, properly applied." I said no. "Think about what you could accomplish. Together we'd reshape this world. Remove the weak, elevate the strong, create a society based on actual merit rather than bleeding heart ideology." All for One leaned forward. "You've already killed before. You already see the world in terms of power dynamics. The only difference between us is that I embrace what I am, while you hide behind hero licenses and moral justification." "You're wrong," Izuku replied, his stance shifting into combat-ready position. "The difference between us is that I fight to protect. You fight to dominate. I use my strength to shield the weak. You use yours to exploit them. We're nothing alike." "Aren't we, though?" All for One's smile was evident in his voice. "You massacred 200 villains to avenge an attack on your family. You've defeated opponents with ruthless efficiency, showing no mercy or hesitation. You prioritize those you love over broader ethical concerns. These are my methods, not traditional heroism." "My methods serve a heroic purpose," Izuku countered. "Yours serve only yourself." "And that's where you're wrong," All for One said, rising from his throne. "I serve power itself, the purity of strength without apology or restraint. I thought you understood that. I thought perhaps you'd be different from the usual weak-willed heroes. But it seems you're just another child playing at darkness while clinging to light." "Last chance," Izuku said quietly. "Release them, or I'll take them." All for One laughed, a rich, amused sound that echoed through the warehouse. "Oh, you're welcome to try. But understand this, the moment you attack me, my subordinates will kill your precious family. Are you fast enough to stop them while fighting me?" "Let's find out," he signaled. The 40 villains surrounding Rumi and Atsushi activated their quirks. Weapons aimed at the captives, Izuku's compass read them all simultaneously. 40 different threat vectors, 40 different attack patterns, 40 different timing windows. And All for One himself, that overwhelming presence preparing to engage. Most people would see this as impossible. 40 armed villains, 2 hostages, 1 ancient evil. No way to save everyone without backup. But Izuku's adaptive combat had evolved facing overwhelming odds. His compass needle operated at peak efficiency. His destructive death style was refined to handle exactly this scenario. And most importantly, he'd learned something crucial during his time at UA. He didn't have to do everything alone. His phone, tucked in his pocket, had been transmitting audio since he'd entered the warehouse. All Might, Aizawa, and every pro hero in range had been listening to the entire confrontation. They were already moving, already coordinating their approach, but they wouldn't arrive in time to stop the initial assault. So Izuku would have to. Destructive death. Final form, perfect execution. He'd never attempted this before. Blue-silver chaotic afterglow at maximum power, extended across a 40-target engagement while simultaneously defending 2 specific positions. It required perfect technique, absolute quirk control, and precision that bordered on supernatural. Izuku achieved all of it. He exploded into motion, his body moving faster than he'd ever managed. Compass Needle tracked all 40 villains simultaneously. Adaptive combat optimized his movement for efficiency. and his destructive death style manifested in its truest form. The assault was impossible to fully describe. Izuku seemed to be in multiple places at once, each strike landing in the heartbeat before a villain could harm the hostages. Air-type shockwaves knocked weapons aside. Disorder combinations dropped attackers mid-quirk activation. Crown splitters created defensive shockwaves protecting Rumi and Atsushi. 3 seconds. That's how long it took Izuku to disable all 40 villains while preventing any harm to his family. All for One watched with genuine surprise bordering on awe. Impossible, the ancient villain breathed. You shouldn't be capable of that level of coordination. Your quirk makes you stronger against powerful opponents, not more skilled against multiple weak ones. You're wrong about my quirk, Izuku interrupted, already moving to free Rumi and Atsushi. Adaptive combat doesn't just make me stronger, it makes me better. Every challenge I face, every opponent I fight, every impossible scenario I overcome, all of it refines my capabilities. You gave me exactly what I needed to evolve past my previous limits. He reached Rumi and Atsushi, cutting their bonds with precise strikes. Both immediately activated their own quirks, ready to fight. Get out of here, Izuku said firmly. All Might and the other pros are incoming. This is about to become a war zone. Like hell we're leaving you, Rumi shot back. You think I'm running while you face this monster alone? Rumi. She's right, Atsushi agreed, his old body settling into combat stance. You've grown strong, Izuku, but you don't have to fight alone anymore. Before Izuku could argue, All for One attacked. The ancient villain moved with speed that belied his appearance, crossing the warehouse in an instant. His fist, enhanced by multiple strength quirks, crashed into the floor where Izuku had been standing, creating a crater that destroyed the concrete. Enough talk, All for One declared. Let's see if your power is genuine or merely theatrical. The battle that followed was unlike anything Izuku had experienced. All for One had hundreds of quirks at his disposal: strength enhancements, speed boosts, elemental attacks, defensive abilities, regeneration. Each one powerful individually, devastating in combination. Izuku's adaptive combat responded with matching fervor. Every quirk All for One deployed, his body learned to counter. Every attack pattern, his compass predicted. Every technique, his destructive death style found openings to exploit. They clashed across the warehouse, each exchange shattering walls and cratering floors. All for One's power was immense, centuries of stolen quirks creating combinations that would overwhelm any normal opponent. But Izuku was evolving in real time. This was the ultimate opponent his quirk had been waiting for, someone genuinely, terrifyingly strong. Every second of combat pushed adaptive combat to new heights. Rumi and Atsushi tried to assist, but the battle's intensity kept them at bay. All for One's casual attacks were powerful enough to kill most pros. Only Izuku's intervention prevented them from being caught in the crossfire. Fascinating, All for One said, regenerating from a devastating annihilation-type strike. Your adaptation is even more impressive than I anticipated, but adaptation has limits. Can you evolve faster than I can escalate? He proved his point by activating a dozen quirks simultaneously: strength, speed, regeneration, elemental attacks, defensive barriers, sensory enhancement. The combination created something approaching ultimate power, the kind of force that had made All for One the world's most feared villain. Izuku's body strained under the assault. His adaptive combat was working overtime, trying to counter multiple high-level threats at once. He was getting stronger, yes, but was it enough? Then the warehouse doors exploded inward. All Might arrived in his prime form, accompanied by Aizawa, Endeavor, and a dozen other top heroes. All for One. All Might's voice thundered across the battlefield. Your reign of terror ends tonight. All Might, the ancient villain replied with genuine pleasure. It's been too long since our last meeting, and you've brought friends. How thoughtful. The battle escalated into chaos. Pro heroes engaged All for One from multiple angles while Izuku continued his assault. The ancient villain was forced to divide his attention, and that division created opportunities, but All for One was prepared even for this. From the shadows, more villains emerged, his true elite, each one with power approaching pro-hero level, and among them, a figure that made Izuku's compass sense recoil in recognition: Shigaraki Tomura, All for One's apprentice with his decay quirk that could destroy anything he touched. Young Midoriya, Shigaraki rasped, his hands reaching toward Rumi. All for One wants you alive, but he didn't say anything about your girlfriend. Time seemed to slow, Shigaraki's hand mere centimeters from Rumi's face, her eyes wide with realization. Atsushi moving to intercept, too slow. Pro-heroes engaged with other villains, unable to help. And Izuku, too far away to reach her in time through conventional means. Adaptive combat responded to the crisis by shattering every limit he'd ever known. The evolution was physical, visible, unprecedented. Blue-silver energy erupted around Izuku's body, his quirk reaching a state it had never achieved before. His strength multiplied tenfold. His speed became superhuman. His compass sense expanded to encompass the entire battlefield with perfect clarity. He crossed the impossible distance in a fraction of a second, his hand intercepting Shigaraki's before contact with Rumi. The decay quirk activated on his skin. Cells began disintegrating, flesh breaking down at molecular level. And adaptive combat adapted. Izuku's body learned to resist decay in real time, his cells regenerating faster than Shigaraki could destroy them. Within 2 seconds, he'd developed complete immunity to the quirk that had made Shigaraki one of the world's most dangerous villains. Impossible, Shigaraki whispered. Everything's impossible until someone does it, Izuku replied, then delivered destructive death, annihilation type at full power. The strike hit Shigaraki's chest with force that should have been lethal. The villain flew backward, crashing through multiple walls before finally stopping. But Izuku felt it, beneath Shigaraki's fighting spirit, another presence. Something ancient and terrible, piggybacking on the young villain's body. All for One hadn't just taught Shigaraki, he'd prepared him as a vessel. No, Izuku breathed, his compass sense reading the truth. No, no, no. All for One's laugh echoed across the battlefield. You're perceptive. Yes, young Midoriya. Shigaraki is more than my student. He's my contingency, my next body should this one fail. The ancient villain's form began to blur, his fighting spirit shifting, changing, and in the distance, Shigaraki's unconscious body began to move, animated by something that wasn't entirely him anymore. You've forced my hand, All for One continued, his voice coming from both bodies now. I'd hoped to recruit you through persuasion, but you've proven too dangerous to leave as an enemy, so I'll take a different approach. The two bodies, All for One's original form and Shigaraki's possessed vessel, began merging. Reality itself seemed to warp as centuries of stolen quirks combined with Shigaraki's decay, creating something that transcended normal villain categories. All for One. Shigaraki stood, its form shifting between the two identities, power radiating from it in visible waves. Every quirk All for One had ever stolen, amplified by perfect fusion with an ideal vessel. This is what true evolution looks like, the merged being said in a voice that combined both identities. What humanity could achieve if we stopped pretending power needs moral justification. All Might stared in horror. Impossible. The fusion process should have killed them both. Would have in anyone weaker, All for One Shigaraki agreed. But I've had centuries to perfect the technique, and young Shigaraki's body provides the perfect foundation. Its attention fixed on Izuku. Now, shall we see who's truly stronger? Your adaptive combat versus my perfected power? Izuku looked at this impossible opponent, at the merged villain that represented everything wrong with pursuing strength without purpose. His adaptive combat was already responding, his body preparing for the ultimate confrontation. Rumi, Atsushi, get everyone out, he said quietly. This is going to get worse before it gets better. Izuku, Rumi started. Please, he interrupted, I need you safe. Both of you. I can't fight at full power if I'm worrying about collateral damage. All Might stepped forward. Young Midoriya, you can't face this alone. We'll fight together. No, Izuku said firmly. This is my fight. All for One targeted me, threatened my family, tried to break me, and I'm going to end him. He looked at Japan's symbol of peace. Trust me. Please, I'm strong enough for this. All Might saw something in Izuku's eyes. Determination, power, absolute certainty. He nodded slowly. Everyone fall back, the number one hero ordered. Evacuate the complex. This is between them now. The pros hesitated, then obeyed. Rumi kissed Izuku fiercely before leaving. You better survive this, she said against his lips. We have a wedding to plan. I will, he promised. I'll always come back to you. Within minutes, the warehouse was empty except for Izuku and All for One Shigaraki. Two beings, each representing different philosophies of power, facing each other across a battlefield littered with the unconscious bodies of lesser villains. No interruptions, All for One Shigaraki said with satisfaction. Just you and me, the way it should be. The way it ends, Izuku corrected, and the final battle began. The clash of their initial exchange shattered the warehouse walls, the shockwave visible for miles. All for One Shigaraki moved with impossible speed, combinations of stolen quirks creating attacks that came from multiple angles simultaneously. Izuku's compass needle tracked them all. Adaptive combat evolved his defenses in real time. Destructive Death style found counters to each combination. They fought across the ruins of the complex, each exchange destroying more of the environment. All for One Shigaraki's decay quirk could destroy anything it touched, but Izuku had already adapted immunity. The villain's strength enhancement matched Izuku's physical power. Its regeneration countered his damage output. You're learning, All for One Shigaraki observed, regenerating from a devastating crown splitter. Your adaptation is genuinely impressive, but I have centuries of combat experience. Hundreds of quirks perfected through generations of use. You're strong, but you're still just a child. Then I'll have to grow up fast, Izuku replied, and felt his quirk surge higher. This was what adaptive combat was designed for. The ultimate challenge, the impossible opponent, the fight that required absolute evolution. Every second of combat pushed Izuku closer to his true potential. Blue-silver energy intensified around his body. His speed increased beyond what should be physically possible. His strength reached levels that cracked the earth with each step. His technique refined to supernatural precision, destructive death, final form, transcendent execution. Izuku had never named this evolution before because he'd never achieved it. But facing All for One Shigaraki, his body and quirk synchronized into something beyond his previous limits. The assault was transcendent. Each strike carried the weight of everything Izuku had learned, everyone he'd fought to protect, every moment of training under Atsushi's guidance. Compass Needle predicted not just attacks, but intentions. Adaptive combat didn't just counter quirks, it preemptively evolved against them. All for One Shigaraki was forced backward for the first time, genuinely struggling against the onslaught. Its regeneration couldn't keep up with the damage. Its multiple quirks found themselves systematically countered. Impossible, the merged villain gasped. You're just one quirk. I have hundreds. And I only need one, Izuku interrupted, his assault never slowing. Because my quirk evolves. Yours is static, no matter how many you steal. Every second we fight, I'm getting stronger. Can you say the same? All for One Shigaraki tried something desperate. It activated every offensive quirk simultaneously. Elemental attacks, physical strikes, mental assaults, spatial distortions. The combination should have destroyed multiple city blocks. Izuku walked through it all. Adaptive combat had learned. Fire couldn't burn him after fighting Todoroki. Ice couldn't slow him. Physical force couldn't overwhelm his technique. Mental attacks bounced off willpower forged through years of suffering. Spatial distortions were predicted by Compass Needle and avoided. He reached All for One Shigaraki through the chaos and delivered destructive death, annihilation type, at absolute maximum output. The strike hit the villain's core, the point where All for One and Shigaraki's fusion was maintained. The impact was devastating. Reality itself seeming to crack around the blow. All for One, Shigaraki screamed, a sound mixing both identities, both personalities recoiling from the damage. The fusion began destabilizing, the two beings separating involuntarily. No, All for One's voice emerged from the splitting forms. No, this can't. I spent centuries perfecting. You spent centuries stealing power from others, Izuku said coldly, not relenting his assault. But stolen power has no foundation, no purpose, no meaning beyond accumulation. Another strike, this one targeting All for One's original form. I earned every ounce of my strength, through training, through suffering, through protecting what matters. That's the difference between us. The fusion completely collapsed. All for One and Shigaraki separated into distinct bodies again, both weakened by the forced splitting. And Izuku stood between them, his blue-silver aura blazing like a star. Last words? He asked, his voice carrying finality. You think you've won? All for One rasped, his ancient body failing. But I've prepared for this. Contingencies upon contingencies. Successors waiting in the shadows. Even if you kill me now, my vision will. Destructive Death Final Form, Blue-Silver Chaotic Afterglow, perfect execution. Izuku unleashed everything. Every technique, every refinement, every evolution, all focused into one ultimate assault. The combination was art and annihilation combined, so perfectly executed that it transcended normal combat into something approaching divine. He killed them both. Not quickly, not mercifully, but thoroughly, definitively, ensuring no regeneration, no resurrection, no contingency could bring them back. All for One's centuries of evil ended with his body completely destroyed. Shigaraki's potential for future darkness eliminated before it could fully manifest. When it was over, Izuku stood alone in the ruins, breathing hard, his blue-silver aura fading. The two greatest villains of their era lay dead at his feet. He'd done it. Against impossible odds, facing ultimate evil, he'd protected everything that mattered. His phone buzzed. A message from All Might. "Is it over?" Izuku typed back, "Yes, they're dead. Both of them." A pause. "Stay there." "We're coming back." The pro-heroes returned to find Izuku sitting on rubble, looking exhausted but alive. All Might approached cautiously, studying the bodies. "You really did it," the symbol of peace said quietly. "You defeated All for One, killed him, ended the threat." "I did what was necessary," Izuku replied. "He would have kept coming, kept threatening everyone I love. This was the only way." "The Hero Public Safety Commission won't like this," Aizawa warned. "Killing villains, even in self-defense, violates." "I don't care what they like," Izuku interrupted, his voice carrying steel. "All for One is dead. His reign of terror is over. Japan is safer because of what I did here tonight. If the Commission has a problem with that, they can take it up with me directly." All Might and Aizawa exchanged glances. This wasn't a student speaking. This was a warrior who just won the ultimate battle and wasn't interested in debates about methodology. "You saved the world tonight," All Might said finally. "Whatever comes next, remember that. You did what needed to be done." Rumi pushed through the crowd of heroes, followed closely by Atsushi. She pulled Izuku into a fierce embrace, tears streaming down her face. "You scared the hell out of me," she whispered against his chest. "Don't ever do that again." "I can't promise that," he replied honestly, "but I promise I'll always come back to you." "You better, warrior. You better." The cleanup took hours. All for One's body was secured for analysis, Shigaraki's remains collected, the warehouse complex cordoned off as a crime scene. Media descended like locusts, cameras capturing every moment. And through it all, Izuku sat with Rumi and Atsushi, the three of them together, alive, safe. Everything he'd fought for, protected. As dawn broke over Musutafu, Izuku Midoriya, 16-year-old UA student, master of destructive death, wielder of adaptive combat, stood as the hero who'd killed All for One. The world would never be the same, and neither would he. The aftermath of All for One's death consumed the hero world for months. The Hero Public Safety Commission initially tried to censure Izuku for the kills, but public opinion overwhelmed them. Japan had lived in All for One's shadow for generations. Learning that a first-year UA student had permanently eliminated that threat made Izuku an instant legend. Some heroes condemned his methods, others praised his effectiveness. The debate raged across media, in hero agencies, in government chambers. But everyone agreed on one thing. Izuku Midoriya was the most powerful hero of his generation. UA's year-end approached with Izuku's status radically transformed. He was no longer just a student, he was the boy who saved Japan. His classmates treated him with mixture of awe and wariness. Teachers didn't know how to grade someone who'd accomplished more than most pros. The sports festival victory seemed quaint compared to killing All for One. "This is weird," Bakugo complained during lunch. "Everyone's treating you like you're already a top hero." "Because he basically is," Todoroki replied pragmatically. Midoriya defeated the most dangerous villain in history. That elevates him beyond student status. "Still weird," Bakugo muttered, but even his competitive fire seemed dimmed by the reality of the gap between them. Izuku felt the distance growing between himself and his classmates. They were still kids, worried about grades and training and social dynamics. He'd killed 2 people to protect everyone he loved. That experience separated him in ways no amount of shared classes could bridge. Only Rumi understood. She'd been there, faced death alongside him, watched him evolve into something unprecedented. "You can't go back," she said during one of their evening walks through UA grounds. "You've crossed a line the others haven't. Killed villains, faced ultimate evil, evolved beyond normal hero categories. You're different now. I know, Izuku replied quietly. Sometimes I miss being just a student, just a fighter trying to prove himself. You proved yourself, multiple times over. She squeezed his hand. Now you get to decide what comes next. Continue at UA? Graduate early? Join a hero agency? The world's yours, Izuku. I want to finish my education, he decided. Not because I need it for power, but because Atsushi-sensei would want me to. Because there's value in the journey, not just the destination. Good answer, warrior. They walked in comfortable silence until Rumi stopped, turning to face him with unusual seriousness. I've been thinking, she said. About us, about the future. What about it? We've been engaged for almost 2 years. We've faced death together, fought villains together, survived impossible odds. Her expression was intense. I don't want to wait anymore, Izuku. I want to marry you. Soon. Not in some distant future, but now, while we're both alive to appreciate it. Izuku's heart skipped. You want to get married? Now, I'm still 16. You'll be 17 in a few months. Legal marrying age with parental consent, she grinned. And I'm pretty sure Atsushi will consent, considering he basically views you as his son already. Rumi, I love you, she interrupted. I've loved you since you stumbled into our lives trying to rob the dojo. You're the strongest person I know, the most dedicated fighter, the most loyal partner. I want to spend my life with you. Why wait? He stared at this incredible woman, fierce, powerful, loving, perfectly suited to him in every way that mattered. She was right. Right. Why wait? After I graduate UA, he said firmly, I want to finish what I started there, but the day after graduation, if you'll still have me, I'll marry you. I'll still have you, she promised, kissing him fiercely. And then we're going to build the most amazing life together. That promise sustained them through the remaining months of the school year. Izuku continued his education, refining his techniques, helping classmates when they struggled. But everyone knew his path was different from theirs. When graduation approached, Izuku stood first in every category. Combat ability, practical application, strategic thinking, heroic conduct. His academic scores were middling. Book learning had never been his strength, but his field performance was unprecedented. Principal Nezu called him to his office the week before graduation. Midoriya, you've had quite the interesting time at UA, the principal said with his unsettling smile. Defeated 200 villains before even enrolling. Dominated the sports festival. Killed All for One and Shigaraki. And maintained perfect attendance despite everything. Quite the resume. I committed to finishing UA, I keep my commitments. Indeed you do, which brings me to an unusual proposition. Nezu sipped his tea. The Hero Public Safety Commission has authorized me to offer you immediate top 10 hero ranking upon graduation. Normally heroes build their rank over years of field work, but your accomplishments warrant exception. What rank? Izuku asked. Number 1, Nezu replied simply. Effective immediately after graduation, you'd replace All Might as Japan's symbol of peace. Izuku sat in silence, processing the offer, everything he'd worked for handed to him at 17 years old. I accept, he said finally. Not because I think I deserve it, but because the role serves a purpose. Japan needs a symbol of peace, especially after All for One's death. If I can fill that role, I will. Pragmatic as always, Nezu approved. Your hero name has already been registered based on your performance. The martial hero, Midoriya. Clean, simple, evocative of your style. It works. Graduation is in 3 days. Your ranking announcement will come the day after, and I believe you have a wedding planned shortly thereafter. How did you know? I'm the principal, Midoriya. I know everything that happens involving my students. Nezu's smile widened. Congratulations on your graduation, your ranking, and your upcoming marriage. You've earned all of it. The graduation ceremony was surreal. Izuku stood with Class 1A, accepting his diploma, listening to speeches about their bright futures as heroes. But his mind was elsewhere, focused on what came next. All Might gave the commencement speech, his words inspiring and heartfelt. When he mentioned heroes who've already proven themselves, his eyes found Izuku in the crowd. After the ceremony, as students celebrated with families and friends, Izuku stood with Rumi and Atsushi. I'm proud of you, the old master said, his hand on Izuku's shoulder. You've become everything I hoped and more. A warrior with purpose, a hero with strength, a man worthy of the Usagiyama name. Sensei, I'm officially making you co-master of the dojo, Atsushi interrupted. Equal authority with me in all matters. The Usagiyama dojo will be your legacy as much as mine. Izuku felt tears prick his eyes. Thank you for everything, for saving me, training me, giving me purpose when I had none. You saved yourself, Izuku. I just provided direction. Atsushi smiled warmly. Now go celebrate. You've got a wedding to prepare for. The wedding was scheduled for 1 week after graduation. Small, intimate, held at the dojo with only close friends and family attending. Exactly what both Izuku and Rumi wanted. All Might stood as Izuku's best man. Several Class 1A students attended: Bakugo, Todoroki, Uraraka, Ida, pro heroes who'd worked with them over the years. Rumi's fellow heroes. Atsushi officiating, his expression mixing pride and happiness. When Rumi walked down the makeshift aisle in her wedding dress, Izuku's breath caught. She was beautiful, powerful, and graceful, fierce and gentle, everything he'd ever needed. They exchanged vows they'd written themselves. Promises about partnership, strength, protecting each other, building a life worth fighting for. Traditional and personal combined. I promise to stand beside you, Izuku vowed. Not ahead or behind, but beside, as your equal, your partner, your family. Every battle we face together. I promise to love you, Rumi replied. Not in spite of your darkness, but because of it. Because you took that darkness and made it into strength. Because you never gave up. Because you're the most amazing person I've ever met. Atsushi pronounced them married. Rumi pulled Izuku into a kiss that lasted way too long for polite company, and neither of them cared. The celebration afterward was joyful, loud, perfect. Bakugo got drunk and challenged Izuku to a fight, which Rumi declined on his behalf. Todoroki gave a surprisingly emotional speech about friendship. All Might cried openly, proud of his unofficial protege. And through it all, Izuku felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Complete happiness. No threats hanging over him, no enemies to defeat. Just this moment, this joy, this life he'd built. Late that night, lying beside his new wife in their apartment, Izuku stared at the ceiling in contentment. We did it, he said quietly. We actually made it to the happy ending. This isn't the ending, Rumi corrected, curling against him. This is the beginning of our marriage, our life together, all the adventures ahead. True, but it feels like an ending too. The end of constantly fighting for survival, the end of being alone. You're never alone anymore, she promised. From now on, it's us, together, whatever comes next. 5 years later, the Usagiyama dojo had expanded significantly. What was once a modest training facility now occupied an entire city block, with multiple training halls, specialized equipment, and dozens of students. Atsushi still taught the older students, but Izuku handled advanced combat training for those with genuine potential. The dojo's reputation had grown alongside Izuku's. Students came from across Japan, hoping to learn from the #1 hero and his wife, the #2 hero, Mirko. Not all were accepted. The Usagiyama style demanded discipline, dedication, and proper spirit. Izuku stood in the main training hall watching his current advanced class spar. 20 students, ranging from teenagers to adults, all learning the destructive death style he'd refined over years of combat and teaching. Focus, he called out as 2 students lost their form. The technique is meaningless if your foundation is weak. Reset and try again. They obeyed immediately. Izuku's reputation as a teacher was even more intense than his hero work. He pushed students hard but fairly, demanding excellence while providing the guidance to achieve it. A small figure toddled into the training hall, barely 3 years old, with green hair tipped pink and bright green eyes. She made a beeline for Izuku, tiny arms raised. Papa! Izuku swept her up, his fierce teaching demeanor melting into softness. Hey, princess. What are you doing out here? Where's your mother? Right here, Rumi said, entering with a second child, a boy barely 2 years old with white hair and rabbit ears. Someone escaped during nap time. Again. I know tired, their daughter declared proudly. You never are, Izuku agreed, kissing her forehead. But your brother is. Say hi to your brother, Akari. Akari waved at her little brother, Kenji, who was already falling asleep against Rumi's shoulder. The training class watched this domestic scene with fascination. The #1 hero, the man who'd killed all for one, being completely soft for his children. Class dismissed for today, Izuku announced. Practice your forms at home. I'll test them next session. The students bowed and left. Izuku set Akari down, and she immediately ran toward the training dummies, mimicking the combat stances she'd seen. "She's going to be a handful," Rumi observed with amusement. "She takes after her mother," Izuku replied, dodging Rumi's playful kick. "Stubborn, fierce, convinced she can fight anything." "And he takes after his father," Rumi said, indicating their sleeping son. "Quiet, observant, but with power sleeping beneath the surface." "They're perfect," Izuku said, gathering his family close. "Both of them." Atsushi entered the hall, his hair entirely white now, but his spirit still strong. He watched his surrogate son with grandchildren and smiled. "Beautiful sight," the old master said. "4 generations of Usagiyama warriors under one roof. This is what I dreamed of when I opened this dojo." "Sensei, you should rest," Izuku said, noting Atsushi's slight limp. "Your hip is bothering you." "My, old age is bothering me," Atsushi replied with a chuckle. "But I'm not ready to retire completely. The dojo still needs me." "It needs you healthy," Rumi corrected. "Izuku and I have the teaching covered. You should focus on enjoying your grandchildren." As if summoned by the word, Akari ran to Atsushi, hugging his leg. "Grandpa, teach me fight." "You're 3, princess. A bit young for real training." "No, teach now." She settled into a tiny stance that was actually a decent imitation of defensive form. Atsushi laughed, the sound rich with joy. "All right, little warrior, let's see what you've got." Watching his daughter learn from his master, Izuku felt a completeness he'd never imagined during his street fighting days. This was what he'd fought for. This family, this peace, this life built on foundations of strength and love. His phone buzzed. A message from Hero Dispatch about a villain attack downtown. Nothing major, standard threat that could be handled by anyone in the top 10, but he was number 1, and that meant responding. "I have to go," he told Rumi. "Villain attack." Standard response. "Be careful," she said, kissing him. "We'll have dinner ready when you're back." "Always am, always do." He changed into his hero costume, sleek, practical, emblazoned with the Usagiyama Dojo symbol. The design had evolved over the years, but the core remained the same. Functionality over flash, intimidation through presence. The villain attack was indeed routine. 3 thugs with minor enhancement quirks trying to rob a bank. They saw Midoriya arrive and immediately surrendered. Smart choice. "You know the drill," Izuku said as police secured them. "Cooperate, accept your sentences. Maybe you'll get out in time to actually do something with your lives." One of the thugs, barely 20, looked up with desperate hope. "Is it true that you used to be a street fighter, that you were like us before becoming a hero?" "It's true," Izuku confirmed. "I was worse than you. I stole, fought, survived however I could. But I found people who saw potential in me, who gave me purpose beyond survival. You can find that too, if you choose it." The young villain's expression shifted from desperation to something like determination. Maybe the words would stick. Maybe not. But Izuku tried, always tried, to offer the kind of second chance he'd received. The evening news led with footage of his response, analyzing his technique, discussing his legacy. 5 years as #1 hero, and he still dominated headlines. But that was fine. The attention served a purpose, reminding villains that Japan was protected by someone who wouldn't hesitate, wouldn't waver, wouldn't fail. He returned home to find dinner ready, children bathed, family waiting. This routine, so simple and domestic, meant more than any hero ranking or public recognition. After the kids were asleep, Izuku and Rumi sat on their apartment balcony, overlooking the city they protected. "Do you ever miss it?" Rumi asked. "The constant fights, the edge of death battles, the intensity of those early days?" "Sometimes," Izuku admitted. "There was a purity to fighting for survival, a simplicity I don't have anymore. But this is better," he said firmly. "A life worth protecting means more than a life spent fighting. Our children, our students, our purpose, it's deeper than anything I experienced during those desperate years." "Good answer, warrior," she leaned against him. "Though I do miss when you were just that terrifying kid who tried to rob my dojo. I miss when you were just the angry rabbit girl who kicked my ass and then took pity on me." They laughed, remembering those early days. The pain and fear and uncertainty. The gradual building of trust, the discovery of love, the forging of family from broken pieces. "We've come a long way," Rumi said. "We have," Izuku agreed, "and we've got a long way still to go." Together? Always together. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the city lights twinkle beneath them. Somewhere out there, villains plotted, heroes responded. The cycle continued, but here in this moment, Izuku Midoriya, former Street Fighter, current #1 hero, husband, father, teacher, was exactly where he needed to be. The warrior had ascended. He'd faced darkness and emerged stronger. He'd lost everything and rebuilt with purpose. He'd found love, built family, created legacy, and now, finally, he had peace. The kind of peace that could only be earned through strength. The kind of peace that required constant vigilance to maintain, but peace nonetheless. In the dojo's main hall, a young student practiced forms late into the night, hoping to master the destructive death style. Izuku watched from the doorway, seeing himself in that dedication. "You're staying late?" he observed. The student jumped, not having heard his approach. "Master Midoriya, I'm sorry. I should have asked permission." "It's fine. I used to do the same thing." Izuku stepped into the hall. "Show me your form. Let's refine it together." They trained for an hour, Izuku passing on the lessons Atsushi had taught him, the knowledge earned through countless battles and years of refinement. This was legacy. Not just his children, but every student who learned the Usagiyama way. When the student finally left, exhausted but improved, Izuku stood alone in the empty dojo, the same space where he'd first encountered Atsushi and Rumi, where his true journey had begun. "I made it," he said to the empty hall. "Mom, wherever you are, I made it. I became someone worth being. Someone who protects instead of destroys. Someone who builds instead of taking." The hall offered no answer, but Izuku felt a warmth nonetheless. Peace with his past, joy in his present, hope for his future. He locked up the dojo and headed home to his family. To Rumi and Akari and Kenji and the life they'd built together. To the future they'd continue building, one day at a time. The warrior's triumph wasn't defeating All for One, though that mattered. It wasn't becoming #1 hero, though that served a purpose. It wasn't even surviving his brutal childhood, though that laid the foundation. The warrior's triumph was this: finding peace without losing strength, building family without abandoning purpose, teaching the next generation without forgetting the lessons that had shaped him. Izuku Midoriya had ascended from broken street fighter to ultimate warrior to peaceful teacher. And in doing so, he'd proven that strength and gentleness could coexist, that power could serve love, that even those born in darkness could create light. This was his triumph, his legacy, his peace. And it was enough. 10 years after All for One's death, the hero world had transformed completely. Izuku's methods, decisive, efficient, focused on permanent threat elimination, had influenced an entire generation of new heroes. Villain activity had dropped to historic lows. Society was safer than it had been in a century. The Usagiyama Dojo trained over 200 students now, with satellite locations opening across Japan. Atsushi had officially retired at 83, spending his days with grandchildren and great-grandchildren. Rumi's brother had married and had kids too, making family gatherings wonderfully chaotic. Akari was 13, already showing promise as a fighter with her mother's fierce spirit and her father's technical precision. Her quirk, adaptive enhancement, let her temporarily boost specific physical attributes in response to challenges. She trained obsessively, determined to surpass both parents. Kenji was 12, quieter than his sister but no less dedicated. His quirk, Compass Strike, combined elements of both parents' abilities. He could sense opponents and deliver strikes with perfect precision. He preferred intellectual approach to combat, studying strategy, where Akari favored direct assault. And there was a third child now, little Hana, barely 5 years old, with her mother's white hair and her father's green eyes. Her quirk hadn't manifested yet, but she already showed the stubbornness that ran in the family. Izuku watched his children spar in the dojo's advanced training hall, like Akari pushing Kenji to use his quirk more aggressively, Kenji frustrating Akari by predicting her attacks before they landed. "They're incredible," Rumi said, appearing beside him. At 33, she remained #2 hero, still powerful and fierce, but choosing to focus more on teaching and family. "Both of them have surpassed where we were at their age." "They've had better training," Izuku replied, "and better childhoods. No poverty, no trauma, just support and education. Don't sell yourself short. You turn trauma into strength. They're learning from that strength without having to experience the pain that created it." "That's the goal," Izuku agreed. "Each generation stronger than the last without having to suffer as much." His phone buzzed. Another villain attack, but this one was flagged as unusual. High threat level, multiple casualties reported, hero backup requested urgently. I have to go, he said, already moving toward his equipment. I'm coming too, Rumi decided. The kids can handle dojo duties for an afternoon. They suited up together, a practiced routine developed over years of partnership. And then they headed out, number 1 and number 2 heroes responding to a threat together. The scene was chaos. A villain with a fusion quirk that combined multiple captured heroes' abilities, creating something approaching All for One's power level. Pro heroes were struggling, casualties mounting, evacuation incomplete. Finally, real opponents, the villain roared, spotting Midoriya and Mirko. I've been preparing for this, studied your techniques, analyzed your fights, developed specific counters. Today, I surpass. Destructive death, blue-silver chaotic afterglow. Izuku didn't bother with the villain's monologue. He simply attacked, his ultimate technique refined to perfection over a decade of use. The assault was overwhelming, systematic, absolutely devastating. The villain tried to counter, activating stolen quirks and prepared defenses. None of it mattered. Izuku's adaptive combat had evolved beyond anything this fusion villain could match. Each counter was predicted, each defense systematically dismantled, each attack opportunity ruthlessly exploited. Rumi cleaned up the villain's subordinates while Izuku handled the main threat. Their coordination was perfect, each knowing exactly where the other would be, what they'd do, how to support, without interfering. 3 minutes. That's how long it took to completely neutralize a threat that had required multiple pro heroes and was creating mass casualties. Impossible, the villain gasped as Izuku's final strike ended the fight. I prepared for everything. You prepared for who I was, Izuku corrected, not who I've become. That's the difference between stolen power and earned strength. I'm always evolving. You're static. The villain was secured, casualties evacuated, situation resolved. Media swarmed, capturing footage of Japan's number 1 hero, once again proving why he held that rank. Midoriya, how do you maintain such dominance after 10 years? What message do you have for aspiring heroes? Is it true you've never lost a fight since becoming number 1? Izuku ignored the questions, finding Rumi in the crowd. Everyone okay? Minor injuries, nothing serious? You? Fine, let's go home. I promised Hana we'd practice basic forms tonight. They left the scene to other heroes handling cleanup, their job complete. This was routine now. Respond to threat, eliminate threat, return to family. The cycle of hero life refined and optimized. That evening, Izuku taught his youngest daughter basic defensive stances, while Akari and Kenji practiced advanced combinations in the next hall. Rumi handled evening classes for intermediate students. Atsushi sat watching, occasionally offering advice, mostly just enjoying the sight of his legacy thriving. Papa, why you always win? Hana asked during a break, her child's mind curious about her father's abilities. Because I train hard, stay disciplined, and protect what matters. Izuku replied, winning isn't about being strongest, it's about being most prepared. And because your papa is the number 1 hero, Akari added, entering with Kenji, nobody in the world can beat him. Everyone can be beaten, Izuku corrected gently. That's why we train, to minimize that possibility, but never assume invincibility. Have you ever lost? Kenji asked. Izuku thought about that street fight against Rumi years ago, the desperate struggle that had changed his life. Once, to your mother, and it was the most important loss of my life because it led to everything we have now. Rumi grinned from the doorway. I can still kick your ass if you're not careful, warrior. You're welcome to try, he replied with a smile. They sparred that evening after the children were asleep, their combat a dance of perfect coordination and mutual understanding. No holding back, no pulling punches, just 2 powerful heroes pushing each other to maintain their edge. Afterward, lying together in their bedroom, Rumi traced the scars on Izuku's chest, remnants of old battles that even adaptive combat couldn't completely erase. Do you ever regret it? She asked. The path you took, the things you did to get here? Never, Izuku replied without hesitation. Every mistake, every fight, every desperate choice, all of it led to you, to our family, to this life. I'd do it all again exactly the same way. Even robbing the dojo? Especially that, best worst decision I ever made. She laughed, the sound warm and loving. I love you, you impossible man. I love you too, always. They fell asleep holding each other, secure in the life they'd built and the future they'd continue building. 15 years after All for One's death, Akari had graduated from UA with top honors, immediately claiming a spot in the top 20 heroes. Her aggressive style and powerful quirk made her a force to be reckoned with, though Izuku worried she was perhaps too much like him. Too willing to solve problems with violence, Kenji was still at UA in his final year, taking a more measured approach. He'd be graduating in the top 5, his analytical style complementing his sister's aggression perfectly. Hana, at 10 years old, had recently manifested her quirk, absolute adaptation. Where Izuku's quirk adapted him for combat, hers adapted to any situation, environmental, social, physical. The potential was remarkable, and Izuku was carefully guiding her development to ensure she didn't become overwhelmed by it. The dojo was now Japan's premier martial arts institution with thousands of students across multiple locations. Atsushi had passed peacefully in his sleep 2 years prior at 88. His final words to Izuku a simple, "I'm proud of you, son." The dojo bore his name, his legacy, his spirit. Izuku, now 32, remained number 1 hero, though he'd started reducing his active patrol hours to focus on teaching and family. Rumi, number 2 hero at 38, had done the same. They were approaching the age where the next generation would take their mantles. "Are you ready to retire?" Rumi asked one evening, watching Akari on the news handling a villain attack with brutal efficiency. "Not yet," Izuku replied, "but soon. Maybe when Hana starts high school, let Akari and Kenji establish themselves fully, then step back and let them shine. The dojo will keep you busy." "Good. I've spent 20 years fighting villains. I'd like to spend the next 20 teaching warriors," he smiled, following in Atsushi-sensei's footsteps, building the next generation properly. They sat in comfortable silence, reflecting on the journey from desperate street fighters to legendary heroes to approaching retirement. It felt surreal and completely natural simultaneously. "Any regrets?" Rumi asked. "Just one," Izuku admitted. "That my mother didn't live to see this, to meet you, meet her grandchildren, see what I became." "She knows," Rumi said with certainty. Wherever she is, she knows. I hope so." The final years of Izuku's active hero career were marked by steady transition. He took fewer street patrols, focusing on high-level threats and mentoring young heroes. His reputation had evolved from terrifying warrior to respected elder statesman of the hero community. At 35, he officially announced his retirement from active hero work. Akari immediately claimed the number 1 spot, her power and technique surpassing even her father in raw capability. Izuku couldn't have been prouder. His retirement ceremony was attended by heroes from across Japan. All Might, now in his 60s, but still occasionally active, gave a speech about how Izuku had revolutionized hero work through efficiency and dedication. "Young Midoriya showed us that being a hero isn't about flash or fame," All Might said. "It's about protecting people through whatever means necessary. He saved more lives than any hero in history, not through grand gestures, but through consistent excellence. He's earned his rest." Izuku stood beside Rumi, their children nearby, feeling a satisfaction that ran bone deep. He'd done it. Survived poverty and darkness, became the number 1 hero, built a family, created legacy, and now, finally, he could rest. The Usagiyama Dojo became his entire focus. Teaching advanced students, refining the destructive death style for new generations, ensuring Atsushi's legacy continued properly. He was tougher than ever as a teacher, demanding perfection while providing the guidance to achieve it. Students came from around the world now, hoping to learn from the legendary martial hero. Not all were accepted. Izuku maintained Atsushi's standards: discipline, dedication, proper spirit. Those who couldn't meet them were sent away. Those who could were transformed into warriors. Rumi retired 2 years after Izuku, joining him as co-master of the dojo. Together, they were an unstoppable teaching force. Her emphasis on aggressive confidence, complementing his focus on technical precision, their children all became top heroes in their own rights. Akari maintained number 1 for 5 years before voluntarily stepping back to number 3, finding she preferred the freedom of lower rankings. Kenji claimed number 2 through strategic brilliance and perfect technique. Hana, when she graduated UA, immediately shot to top 10 through her absolute adaptation quirk's versatility. And through it all, Izuku watched with pride. This was his true victory, not defeating All for One, not becoming number 1 hero, but raising children who surpassed him, creating students who changed the hero world. building legacy that would outlive him. At 40, Izuku looked back on his journey with satisfaction and forward with joy. He had everything he'd ever fought for: family, purpose, peace. On the anniversary of Atsushi's death, Izuku stood in the dojo's memorial hall, looking at his sensei's portrait. "I kept my promise," he said to the image. "Protected everyone you cared about, maintained the dojo's standards, passed on your teachings, built something worthy of your legacy." He felt Rumi's hand on his shoulder, her presence a comfort. "He'd be proud," she said simply. "I know. That's all I ever wanted." They stood together, honoring the man who'd saved them both, who'd given them purpose and family and everything that mattered. Then they returned to the main hall, where students waited for evening instruction. Life continued, training continued, legacy continued. This was the warrior's peace. Earned through strength, maintained through discipline, enjoyed with family. And Izuku Midoriya, former Street Fighter, legendary hero, devoted teacher, knew without doubt that he'd made the right choice every step of the way. The warrior's triumph wasn't in victory over enemies, it was in building a life worth protecting. And that life was beautiful. 25 years after All for One's death, Izuku, now 42, stood in the Usagiyama Dojo's main hall watching the newest class of students practice their forms. His pink-tipped hair was starting to gray at the temples, his body bearing the marks of decades of combat and training. But his presence remained powerful, commanding, undeniable. Rumi, 48, taught the advanced class in the next hall over. Her white hair had silver streaks now, but her spirit burned as fiercely as ever. They'd been married for 25 years, and every day felt like a gift. Their children had all established themselves completely. Akari, 28, was a top hero with her own sidekicks and agency. Kenji, 27, served as a strategic consultant for hero organizations while maintaining his own hero work. Hana, 20, was in her final year at UA, already being scouted by multiple top agencies, and there were grandchildren now. Akari had a daughter, 5-year-old Yui, who showed early signs of inheriting the family's combat talent. She was currently attempting to mimic her grandfather's teaching style with a training dummy, her high voice trying to sound stern. "No, wrong stance. Like this." Yui demonstrated a form she'd clearly learned by watching Izuku teach. The actual students found this adorable but didn't dare laugh. Not with Master Midoriya watching, Izuku smiled despite himself. "Yui-chan, you're correct about the stance, but maybe let the adults handle teaching for now." "But Grandpa, they doing it wrong." "I know. That's why we practice." He walked over, gently correcting a student's form. "See, small adjustments make big differences." Yui watched intently, absorbing every movement. She had the family gift, the ability to learn through observation, to understand combat instinctively. In her, Izuku saw the continuation of everything Atsushi had built. After class, the family gathered for dinner at Izuku and Rumi's home. A tradition maintained for decades, everyone together at least once a week, sharing meals and stories and life. "Hana's graduating next month," Rumi announced. "Top of her class in practical applications." "Of course she is," Akari said proudly. "She's a Midoriya. Excellence is expected." "Don't put pressure on her," Kenji chided his sister. "Let her enjoy the achievement." "I'm fine," Hana assured them, her smile bright. "And I've already decided on my hero agency. I'm joining yours, Akari, if you'll have me." "Are you kidding? Having my sister as a sidekick? That's perfect." They discussed hero work, training methods, Yui's development, Kenji's latest strategic innovation. The conversation was warm, loving, occasionally argumentative in the way families could be. Izuku sat back, watching his family, feeling that familiar completeness. This was what he'd fought for. These moments, these people, this life. After dinner, he and Rumi walked through their neighborhood, bought hand in hand like they'd done for decades. 25 years, Rumi mused. A quarter century since we got married. Feels like yesterday and forever ago simultaneously. "I know what you mean," Izuku replied. "Sometimes I still see the angry rabbit girl who kicked my ass in that dojo. Other times I see the warrior partner who's fought beside me for decades. Both are true," she said. "Just like you're both the desperate street fighter I met and the legendary hero you became." They walked in comfortable silence until reaching a familiar spot, the cemetery where Inko Midoriya was buried. They visited regularly, keeping the grave maintained, honoring the woman who'd given Izuku life. "Hey Mom," Izuku said, kneeling before the headstone. Brought some updates. Hana's grading UA next month. Yui's showing serious talent already. The dojo's thriving. Family's healthy and happy. He paused, composing his thoughts. I think I finally understand what you meant when you said I could be a hero. Not just because of my power or my techniques, but because of who I chose to be with that power. I chose to protect instead of destroy, to build instead of break, to love instead of hate. Rumi knelt beside him, adding her own silent prayer. Thank you for raising such an impossible, wonderful man, she told the grave. Thank you for giving him life, even though yours was cut short. Your sacrifice wasn't in vain. Look what he became. Look what we built together. They stayed for a while, then walked home through the evening air. That night, lying in bed, Izuku reflected on his journey. From street fighter to dojo thief to trained warrior to hero to husband to father to grandfather. Each phase building on the previous, creating something greater than the sum of its parts. Any regrets? Rumi asked, the question she'd posed countless times over the years. Not one, Izuku replied, meaning it completely. Every choice led here. Every struggle was worth it. Every battle was necessary. Even the painful parts, especially those. Pain taught me strength. Loss taught me value. Darkness taught me to appreciate light. He pulled her close. I'm grateful for all of it. They fell asleep holding each other, secure in the life they'd built and the legacy they'd created. The Usagiyama Dojo's 50th anniversary celebration was a massive event. Former students from around the world returned to honor the institution that had shaped them. Heroes, martial artists, ordinary people whose lives had been touched by Atsushi's vision and Izuku's dedication. Izuku, now 67, stood before the assembled crowd with Rumi beside him. His hair was completely gray now, his body showing age's marks despite remaining powerful. But his spirit was unchanged, that same fierce dedication that had driven him from street fighter to legendary hero. 50 years ago, Izuku began, Atsushi Usagiyama opened this dojo with a simple vision: create warriors with purpose. Not fighters seeking glory or power, but protectors who use their strength to shield the weak. He saved me from darkness, taught me discipline, gave me family. Everything I am, everything this dojo represents, flows from his wisdom. He gestured to the expanded complex, to the hundreds of students who'd passed through, to the impact spreading across society. But a dojo is more than buildings and techniques, it's legacy, the passing of knowledge from generation to generation. Today, I'm proud to announce that my granddaughter Yui Usagiyama will be training as the next master of this. Great-grandchildren now trained at the dojo, some showing remarkable potential. Rumi, 81, had slowed down as well, but remained fierce. They'd been married 50 years, together for 52. Every day was a blessing neither took for granted. On their 50th anniversary, All Might, now 96 and finally truly retired, attended their celebration dinner. Look at you two, the former #1 hero said with a warm smile. Still together, still strong, still terrifying potential enemies. We learned from the best, Izuku replied. You showed us what dedication to purpose looks like. No, young Midoriya, you showed me. All Might's expression was sincere. I was the symbol of peace, yes, but you became something more, the warrior who built peace. Not through overwhelming power alone, but through creating the next generation of protectors. Your legacy will outlive mine. Both our legacies will endure, Izuku said firmly. Different approaches, same goal. Protecting people, creating hope, building a better world. The celebration was small but meaningful. Close family, oldest friends, people who'd walked the journey with them. Stories were shared, tears shed, laughter echoing through the dojo's walls. Late that night, Izuku and Rumi stood in the memorial hall where Atsushi's portrait hung alongside other dojo masters. Soon, Izuku's portrait would join them, a thought both comforting and strange. We've had a good life, Rumi said, studying the portraits, better than either of us had any right to expect. We earned it, Izuku replied, through blood, sweat, dedication, and refusal to give up. Nothing was handed to us. True, she turned to him, her eyes, still sharp despite age, full of love. Any final regrets? Just one, Izuku admitted, that I can't live long enough to see how far our legacy spreads to watch our great-great-grandchildren continue the tradition. They will, Rumi assured him, because we built something real, something that endures beyond individuals. The Usagiyama way isn't about us, it's about the principles we embodied. Atsushi-sensei would be proud. He is proud. Wherever he is, he's watching our family thrive and feeling satisfied that his vision succeeded. They returned to their room, to the bed they'd shared for 50 years, and fell asleep holding hands. At 80, Izuku's health began failing. Nothing dramatic, just the slow decline of a body that had survived too many battles and pushed too hard for too long. He accepted it with the same calm he'd faced every challenge, understanding it as life's final evolution. His mind remained sharp until the end. He spent his final months recording lessons, writing down techniques, ensuring every piece of knowledge was preserved for future generations. The destructive death style would endure, refined and documented in perfect detail. Rumi never left his side. Their children and grandchildren visited constantly, maintaining vigil, sharing love, preparing for the inevitable. On a quiet spring morning, surrounded by family in the dojo where he'd been reborn, Izuku Midoriya passed away peacefully at 82. His funeral was attended by thousands. Heroes from across the world, students he'd trained, people whose lives he'd touched. The ceremony lasted hours, story after story about his impact, his dedication, his legacy. Yui gave the eulogy, her voice strong despite tears. "My grandfather was the greatest warrior I've ever known," she said. "Not because of his power, though he had that in abundance, not because of his technique, though he mastered that completely, but because he understood what strength was truly for, to protect, to build, to create something better than yourself." She gestured to the assembled crowd, to the family standing strong, to the dojo that bore their name. "Look at what he built, not monuments to his ego, but living legacy in every student, every child, every person who learned from his example. That's true greatness, impact that outlives you." Izuku was buried beside Atsushi Usagiyama and Inko Midoriya, the three of them together in death as they'd been connected in life. His headstone was simple: Izuku Midoriya, the martial hero warrior, teacher, father, legend. I protected everything that mattered. Rumi visited the grave every day for the remaining 2 years of her life. She'd talk to him, updating him on family news, sharing her thoughts, maintaining the connection that had defined her for over 50 years. When she passed at 85, she was buried beside him. Her headstone read, Rumi Midoriya, the rabbit hero, Mirko warrior, teacher, mother, legend, together always. 50 years after Izuku's death, the Usagiyama Dojo celebrated its 100th anniversary. The institution had spread across Japan and beyond, with branches in dozens of countries. Thousands of students had trained there, many becoming top heroes, all carrying the values Izuku and Atsushi had embodied. The current master was Izuku's great-great-granddaughter, 25-year-old Mika Midoriya. She stood in the main hall where her legendary ancestor had trained, teaching a new generation the destructive death style. On the wall, portraits of past masters: Atsushi Usagiyama, founder; Izuku Midoriya, the martial hero; Yui Usagiyama, the refined master, each one contributing to the continuous evolution of the dojo's legacy. "Remember," Mika told her students, "strength without purpose is just violence. Master Izuku taught us that power serves protection, that discipline creates capability, that every technique, every form, every lesson exists to make you better defenders of those who need defending." The students listened intently, absorbing wisdom passed down through 5 generations. Outside, Japan thrived. Villain activity remained at historic lows. Hero society had evolved into something that balanced strength with compassion, efficiency with ethics. The world Izuku had fought to create continued improving. In a quiet cemetery, 2 graves stood side by side, Izuku and Rumi Midoriya, together even in death. Flowers were constantly fresh, placed by family members and former students who never forgot the impact these 2 warriors had made. And in the dojo, in the techniques taught, in the students trained, in the values embodied, Izuku's spirit lived on. The warrior had ascended. The warrior had triumphed. The warrior had found peace. And that peace echoed through generations, a living legacy that would endure long after memories of the individual faded. This was the final victory. Not defeating enemies or claiming ranks, but creating something that outlived mortality. A way of life, a set of principles, a dedication to using strength for protection. Izuku Midoriya, the desperate street fighter who robbed a dojo and changed his entire destiny, had become eternal. Not through fame or power, but through the lives he touched and the legacy he built. And somewhere beyond death, in whatever peace awaits warriors who've earned their rest, Izuku and Rumi walked together. Atsushi beside them, proud of everything they'd accomplished. Inko watching her son with satisfaction, knowing he'd become the hero she'd always believed he could be. Their story was complete, their triumph absolute, their peace eternal. And in that peace, they'd found everything worth fighting for. The end. The story of Izuku Midoriya became legend, told and retold across generations. Children learned about the street fighter who became #1 hero. Students studied his techniques. Heroes emulated his methods. The martial hero's legacy shaped hero society for a century after his death. But beyond legend, beyond technique, beyond reputation, his truest legacy lived in the family he'd created and the values they embodied. Every Midoriya child learned to fight, not for glory or power, but to protect. Every Usagiyama Dojo student heard the story of the desperate boy who tried to rob the place and ended up becoming its greatest master. Every hero who trained in the destructive death style carried forward Atsushi's vision and Izuku's refinement. The warrior's ascension became a story about more than individual power. It became a testament to what could be achieved when broken people found purpose, when strength served love, when legacy mattered more than personal glory. Izuku Midoriya had started as nothing, a poor kid with a weak quirk, fighting in streets to survive, stealing to avoid starvation. He'd ended as everything: legendary hero, devoted husband, loving father, inspiring teacher. The journey between those points defined what it meant to be a warrior. Not someone who fought for fighting's sake, but someone who used strength to build something worth protecting. That was his triumph. That was his peace. That was his eternal legacy. And in every student who trained at the Usagiyama Dojo, in every hero who fought to protect rather than to dominate, in every person who chose purpose over fear, Izuku lived on. The warrior's story never truly ended. It just evolved into something greater than any individual could be. And that evolution would continue forever as long as warriors chose to fight for what truly mattered. For family, for purpose, for peace. That was the Usagiyama way. That was Izuku Midoriya's gift to the world, and it would endure, always.
Let's give a massive shout out to our amazing Patreon supporters who keep the channel going strong. For our Pro Hero tier, holding the line and leading the charge, Javon McQuire. For our Symbol of Peace tier, the legends who embody true heroism, Chris Talley, Voice, Alexander Thompson, Jaden Garrett, Remorsefuls, Black Vein, Greg Green, Justin Pontinal, Nicholas Barnes, Joshua Hedrington, Aaron Abercrombie, Drift SK Ater, Akino Himejima, Corey Tokars, Yon, Zero Hope 3656, Devin Black, Rowdy Rich, King of the Pirates, Crow, Daniel Sharp, Roberto Ramos Di Cristina, Dasher Games, Joe Bros, Aiden Schmidt, Mason Edwards, Rayvon Crimson River, Dante Allister, Adam Yunkers, Blood Saints, Omar Cousin, Donna Cafe, Zeth, Hassassin24, Howie60, Ignacio, Albert, Carlos Terry, Rafael Terran, and Kevin Hall. And finally, a Hope of the Universe tier, the unstoppable forces of inspiration. James, Kwonyan Thompson, Big Fro Pro, Juan, I'm Culver, and Colsey. Thank you all so much for powering this channel and making these stories possible. You're the real heroes. And that's how Izuku Midoriya became the warrior who conquered everything. From broken thief to the #1 hero, husband, father, and master. If you want more stories where heroes dominate and rewrite their destinies, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment telling me which character you want to see transform next. Until next time, stay strong.